Handcuffs on Christmas Eve. Christmas Eve in New York has a way of putting a shine on things that do not deserve it. Outside, the street had that hard winter sparkle that makes a fellow think the city has been scrubbed and polished for the holiday. And inside our brownstone there was warmth, brass gleam, and the steady, serious smell of good food being handled by a man who took it personally. If you have never watched Fritz Brenner work on a holiday, you have missed a moral lesson. He could make a man feel guilty for owning a stomach. I was at my desk in the office, with a stack of cards to sign that I did not want to sign, and a list of people I meant to tip who I did not particularly like. The list was in my own handwriting, which I took as proof that the season makes fools of us all. The shades were down, the desk lamp was on, and the room looked the way it always did when Nero Wolfe intended to keep the world outside at a safe distance. The door to the hall was open, and I could hear the faint murmur of the plant room above. Not words, but the particular hush that comes from a man moving among delicate things and not bumping into any of them. Theodore Horseman was up there, tending Wolfe's orchids with the stern devotion of a monk. Wolfe was there too. He was always there at this hour, unless he was in the dining room, and then he was in the dining room. The man's day was arranged like a machine. If you tossed a pebble into the gears, you could lose a hand. I had a paper in front of me, the evening edition, and I was pretending to read it while actually watching the clock. There was a package on the chair beside my desk, wrapped in brown paper, for a niece of mine who thought I was rich. Another package sat on the safe for Saul Panzer, because Saul had the rare ability to do things I did not want to do, and then send a bill for it that made me feel grateful. The front door bell rang, not the polite little chime that meant somebody had a note to deliver, or a plant man with a crate, or a neighbor with a mistaken sense of friendship. This was the long, hard press that meant somebody was either in trouble or wanted to be. I got up with my customary holiday cheer, which is to say none at all, and went through the hall. Fritz was in the kitchen doorway, a white apron on, and an expression that suggested the bell was a personal insult. "If it is carolers," he said, "I will pour water on them." "It will freeze," I told him. "Then we will have to explain it to Inspector Cramer, and he will look hurt." Fritz snorted, which is what he did when he wanted to say a lot of things about the city and the people in it, but had promised himself not to. I opened the front door. Inspector Cramer stood on the stoop with his hat pushed back and his coat collar up. Snow dusted his shoulders. His face was red from the cold and from something else. Behind him, half a step back and to the side, was Sergeant Pearlie Stebbins, looking young and apologetic, which is a look he wore the way other men wear neckties. Cramer held something in his hand. At first I thought it was a thick pair of gloves. Then I saw the dull metal and the open circles. Handcuffs. He did not lift them like a man showing off. He held them as if they weighed more than they should, and he did not like the feel of them. "Good evening, Archie," he said. "Evening, Inspector. That's a fine holiday decoration. I suppose you hang them on the tree." He did not take the bait. He was not in the mood for bait. He was never at his best when he had to do something he did not want to do, which made him almost human. "I got to see Wolfe." "You can see him," I said. "Whether you can see him with those in your hand is another question." His eyes moved past me into the hall, as if he could already see Wolfe sitting in his chair upstairs, a mile wide and a mile immovable. "Archie," he said, and his voice softened the way it does when a man is about to say he is sorry. "Don't make it harder." That did it. The holiday shine on things that do not deserve it cracked a little. I stepped aside. "Come in." They came in, stamping snow off their shoes, and I shut the door. Fritz had retreated to the kitchen with a look of disgust that was not entirely directed at the police. He did not approve of the law entering the house with cold air on its boots. Cramer did not head for the office. He headed straight for the stairs. I went with him. It was my house, too, in the sense that I lived there, and in the more important sense that when the law comes calling, it calls on me first. I was Wolfe's assistant, his buffer, his spokesman, and when necessary, his noise. On the second floor landing, Cramer slowed. He looked up toward the plant room door, which was closed. He cleared his throat. "Wolfe," he called. The door opened. Theodore appeared first, a thin man with careful eyes, as if he could measure the value of a person by the way he stepped. He did not like policemen in the plant room. He did not like anyone in the plant room, except Wolfe and the plants. Then Wolfe came into view, enormous, calm and mildly annoyed, as if someone had interrupted him in the middle of a pleasant thought. He wore his house clothes, dark suit, yellow shirt, and a tie that did not care what day it was. His face was full, his eyes were heavy, lidded, and his mouth had the faint downward curve of a man who has lived long enough to be disappointed often. He took in Cramer, Stebbins and me. His gaze paused on the handcuffs. "Good evening, Inspector," Wolfe said. "You are early. I do not receive callers at this hour, and I do not receive them on this day." "I know," Cramer said. "I'm sorry." Wolfe's eyebrows rose a fraction. An apology from Cramer was like a robin in January. "It could happen, but you checked the calendar to make sure you were not dreaming." "What is the matter?" Wolfe asked. Cramer swallowed. "There's been a murder, 3 blocks from here." Wolfe did not move. "Indeed. A man named Leonard Ashby runs a shipping office on 9th Avenue. He's dead, stabbed." Theodore made a small sound, a tight intake of breath, and then vanished back into the plant room, like a man slipping away from trouble. Wolfe's eyes stayed on Cramer. "Why do you bring that information here?" "Because," Cramer said, and the word came out reluctantly, "we got evidence that leads here." "To my house," Wolfe said. "To you," Cramer said. I felt my mouth open before my brain gave permission. "Now wait a minute. You got to be kidding." Cramer's eyes flicked to me. "I wish I was." Wolfe spoke as if reading a report. "Mr. Ashby was stabbed. The location was his office. There is evidence, you say. That leads to me, explain." Cramer shifted his weight. He still held the handcuffs. He did not put them away, which meant he was serious enough to be miserable. "We found a note in Ashby's pocket," he said, "folded up, not torn. Like he meant to keep it. It had your name on it, your address, and a time, tonight, 7 o'clock. I stared at him. "That's nuts." Wolfe did not look at me. "Continue." "There was also a card," Cramer said. "Your card. Same one you use, black print. Name, address, phone. Ashby had it." Wolfe's eyes narrowed. "My card is not unique." "No," Cramer agreed. "But the note is something else. It's in pencil. It says you would meet him. It's got your name written the way you write it, big and careful." Wolfe's voice remained even. "I did not write such a note." "I didn't say you did," Cramer said quickly. "I said we found it." "Then you should investigate the person who did write it," Wolfe said. "Not waste time here." Cramer's jaw tightened. "I am investigating. I got witnesses. A woman across the street says she saw a big man go into Ashby's office late this afternoon. A big man in a dark coat, couldn't see his face. She said he walked slow, like he owned the sidewalk." I made a noise. "That's every big man in New York." Cramer ignored me. "We also found something in the office. In the wastebasket, a scrap of paper with your phone number, same as on the card, and we got a reason for you to want Ashby dead." Cramer hesitated. Then he said it. "Ashby filed a complaint 2 days ago. Said you tried to pressure him into giving you something. Said you threatened to ruin him." That was so crazy I almost laughed, but it hit my stomach wrong. Wolfe did not threaten people. He did not have to. He could ruin them with a sentence if he wanted, but he did not go around making noisy threats like a cheap tough. Wolfe's expression did not change much, but I saw the tiniest tightening around his eyes. That meant he was not pleased. "I have never spoken to Mr. Ashby," Wolfe said. Cramer nodded. "That's what you'll say, but the complaint is on file. He came into the precinct, talked to a clerk, filled out a statement. He said he'd been to see you. Said your man, you, turned him away but told him you could make trouble." I could feel heat in my face. "Now listen, if some clerk took that down, it doesn't mean it's true, and even if he did come here, which he didn't, Wolfe doesn't make threats, not that kind." Cramer looked at me with a tired patience. "Archie, I don't want to be here." "Then go," I snapped. He lifted the handcuffs slightly. I can't. Wolfe's voice cut through. Inspector, you have not yet stated why you are here with those. Cramer's eyes met Wolfe's. The reluctance was plain. He looked like a man about to swallow a stone. I got a warrant, he said, for your arrest. The word arrest landed in our quiet house like a dropped tray. Even the stair rail seemed to stiffen. Wolfe did not flinch. He did not raise his voice. He did not do anything you could call a reaction. He only looked at Cramer as if considering a new and unpleasant plant disease. You will show it to me, Wolfe said. Cramer reached into his coat and pulled out a folded paper. He held it out. Wolfe did not take it. He did not need to. He could read it at that distance if he cared to. Still, he extended his hand and took it, unfolded it, and read. His face remained steady. When he was done, he handed it back. This is a serious affront, Wolfe said. It is also a serious error. Cramer sighed. I hope it is. Nero, I hope to hell it is, but right now, with a dead man on the floor, and your name in his pocket, I got no choice. You always have a choice, Wolfe said. You choose to follow the easiest path. I was boiling. This is insanity. Do you have any idea what you're doing? You're walking into this house on Christmas Eve with handcuffs and a sad face and expecting us to smile. Cramer's eyes flashed. Don't preach to me, Archie. I didn't cook this. I'm serving it. Wolfe spoke again, calm as an accountant. Inspector, I will not leave this house voluntarily. I have not left it voluntarily for years. I will not begin now, merely because you have been careless. Cramer's shoulders sagged. For a second, I thought he might actually put the handcuffs away and sit down on the stair and cry. Then the policeman in him took over. I'm sorry, he said again, and it sounded real. But I'm doing my duty. He stepped forward. I moved between them. Like hell you are. You're doing the lazy thing. You got a note and a complaint and a witness who saw a big man, and you decide to haul in the one guy you know is going to make you look foolish later. That's not duty. That's convenience. Stebbins cleared his throat, which was his way of asking permission to exist. Cramer's voice hardened. Archie, get out of the way. Not without a fight, I said. Wolfe's voice was suddenly sharper. Archie, stand aside. I turned my head. What? Stand aside, Wolfe repeated. You will not strike a policeman in my house, nor will you be struck. It would be vulgar. I wanted to argue. I wanted to shout. I wanted to throw Cramer down the stairs, which I could not have done unless gravity helped, and gravity is not on anybody's payroll. But Wolfe's tone had the finality of a locked safe. I stepped back, seething. Cramer moved in, slow, as if approaching a sleeping dog. He raised the handcuffs. Wolfe extended his hands, not eagerly, but without struggle, palms inward the way a man offers them, when he intends to keep his dignity even while being insulted. The metal clicked. That sound in that house, on that day, was wrong enough to make my skin crawl. Cramer swallowed again. Nero, I'm sorry. Wolfe looked at him, and for the first time there was something like cold contempt in his eyes. Your regrets are irrelevant. Your competence is the matter. Stebbins shifted forward, ready to escort, but Wolfe did not budge. I must speak to Mr. Goodwin, Wolfe said. Cramer hesitated, then he nodded. 2 minutes. Wolfe turned his head slightly toward me. His hands were cuffed in front of him, which was the only way they could have managed it without a crane. Archie, he said, you will accompany me. I blinked. To the precinct, obviously, Wolfe said. You are my assistant. You will not remain here to exchange pleasantries with Fritz while I am subjected to idiocy. I opened my mouth ready to say something smart. Nothing smart came out. The truth was, my stomach had dropped to a place I did not like, and the only thing holding it together was the idea that I could still do something. Anything. Cramer frowned. He can come, but he doesn't get to interfere. I will interfere, Wolfe said, because I intend to be released, and the only question is whether it will happen tonight or after you have embarrassed yourself further. Cramer's mouth tightened. Let's go. We went down the stairs. Fritz appeared in the hall, wiping his hands on a towel, his eyes wide. He saw the cuffs, and then he looked at me, as if I had arranged this as a joke. What is this? He demanded. Wolfe paused, just inside the front hall, and looked at Fritz with a calm that did not belong to a man in handcuffs. Fritz, Wolfe said, the dinner will not be served on time. You will keep it warm. You will also secure the house. Mr. Goodwin and I will return. Fritz's face went tight. Mr. Wolfe, this is madness. It is New York, Wolfe said. Cramer opened the front door. Cold air rushed in like an accusation. As we stepped onto the stoop, I glanced back at the warm hall, the polished wood, the quiet that belonged to us. Then I looked at Wolfe's cuffed hands. Christmas Eve had turned hostile, and I had the ugly feeling it was only warming up. At the curb, a patrol car waited with its engine running, and as Wolfe, still calm, was guided toward it, Stebbins leaned in close to Cramer and murmured something I could not hear. Cramer's face changed. He looked at me, and for the first time that night, his reluctance was mixed with something else. Worry. Archie, he said quietly, there's one more thing. What thing? He jerked his head toward the car, then lowered his voice. Ashby wasn't the only one who filed a complaint about Wolfe this week. There was another, different name, same kind of story, and that man just went missing an hour ago. Wolfe climbed into the car without a word. I stood on the sidewalk with snowflakes, landing on my coat, listening to the engine idle, and felt the hook sink in deep. Chapter 2, the evidence that points inward. The patrol car's heater had two settings, lukewarm and insult. It hummed away as we slid through streets, dressed up for Christmas, shop windows glowing, wreaths on doors, and a few optimistic souls hurrying along with packages held like promises. It was the kind of night when the city pretends it has a heart. In the back seat, Nero Wolfe sat with his cuffed hands resting on his vast stomach as if they belonged there. He did not fidget. He did not complain. He looked out the window with the detached interest of a man watching an aquarium. A uniformed driver kept his eyes ahead, and Sergeant Stebbins rode in front, turned halfway around like a worried nurse. He was in another car behind them, with an officer I did not know. And I had time to think about how often I had ridden with policemen and how seldom I had enjoyed it. The officer tried polite conversation about the weather, and I gave him polite answers that could have been issued by a phonograph. The city slid by, bright and cold. I saw a street vendor selling roasted nuts, steam rising from his cart, and I thought of Fritz in our kitchen, coaxing a holiday dinner into perfection, and I felt a flash of murderous resentment at the entire New York Police Department. At the precinct, they brought Wolfe in through a side entrance, as if he were a celebrity, and they were shielding him from fans. That was thoughtful. It was also useless. The news would find a way it always did. Inside, the air smelled of wet wool, stale coffee, and ink. It was busy in a quiet, grinding way. A couple of uniformed men looked up, and then looked away fast. You could see curiosity, wrestling with prudence. Cramer took charge at the desk. He kept his voice down, and that alone told me he hated this. He had known Wolfe for years. He had come to our house with bruised pride, threats, bargains, and a handful of rare compliments. And now he was bringing Wolfe in like a pickpocket. He signed papers. He spoke to a clerk. He said Wolfe's name as if it tasted bad. Wolfe stood without leaning, without shifting his weight, without offering the small comforts of cooperation that the police enjoy. He was polite in the strict sense. He did not insult anyone directly. He only radiated disapproval, which in his case could fill a room. "Inspector," Wolfe said finally, "this is preposterous. If you persist, you will regret it." "I'm already regretting it," Cramer muttered. Then louder to the desk sergeant, "Get it done." They took Wolfe's fingerprints. Wolfe held out his hands because he had to, but his face had the expression of a man being asked to wash dishes in a public sink. The clerk tried not to look at him. The clerk failed. When they reached the photograph, Wolfe paused. I refuse, he said. Cramer rubbed his forehead. Nero, don't start. It is not starting, Wolfe said. It is declining. I am not a criminal, and I will not pose like one. The clerk, who had been about to step behind the camera, froze. He looked at Cramer for instructions the way a waiter looks at a customer who has just demanded the chef's resignation. Cramer leaned toward Wolfe. You can refuse, and I can make it worse. You want to spend Christmas in a cell and New Year's in court? Or you want to help me straighten this out? Wolfe's eyes narrowed. He took a breath. He was capable of compromise when it served his logic. He was also capable of making compromise feel like a favor granted under protest. He stood for the photograph, his shoulders squared, his chin slightly raised, and he looked into the camera as if it had personally offended him. The flash popped. I watched, and I thought of the first time I had seen that face in a picture, the newspapers after one of his cases, the headline making him sound like a myth. Now the myth was being filed in a drawer with drunks and burglars. When they were done, Cramer led us to a small interview room with a table, 4 chairs, and a wall clock that ticked like a threat. He told a uniformed man to wait outside. He sent Stebbins away with a nod. Then he sat across from Wolfe and looked at me. You stay, he said. I never leave, I said. Cramer's mouth twitched, not quite a smile. He slid a paper folder onto the table and opened it. I talked to the district attorney, he said. He's not happy, but he signed off. With what we got, he couldn't not. Wolfe's voice was even. What you have is a note of unknown origin, a business card that can be obtained by anyone, and a complaint that can be fabricated. You have nothing. Cramer stared at him. You got a dead man with your name in his pocket. And you have another dead man, Wolfe said, as if stating a weather forecast. Cramer's eyes flicked to me, then back to Wolfe. He hesitated. That was my first real taste of dread. What do you mean? Cramer said. Wolfe's eyes stayed heavy, lidded. You told Mr. Goodwin, on the sidewalk, that another complainant had gone missing. Such events tend to conclude in one of 2 ways. Either the missing man returns, or he is found. Cramer's jaw tightened. He was found, he said quietly. I felt my stomach turn. That's the permit guy. Cramer nodded once. Leo Brand, city permit officer, building and occupancy. He filed a complaint this morning. Filed a complaint about Wolfe, I said. About Wolfe, Cramer confirmed. Wolfe's tone did not change, and he is dead. Yes, Cramer said, poisoned in his apartment. We found him an hour ago. The ticking of the wall clock became loud enough to be obnoxious. Poisoned, Wolfe repeated. How banal, and how convenient. Cramer opened the folder and pulled out a report sheet. The medical examiner says it was a rare toxin. They're still running tests. But Vollmer called me, he said. It's not something you find in a kitchen cabinet, is it? Wolfe asked. Cramer hesitated, then looked at the report. He used a name. I can't pronounce it. Try, Wolfe said. Cramer's eyes went to the paper. Gels something gelsamine. Wolfe's eyelids lifted a fraction. That was the nearest thing to surprise he permitted himself. Gelsamine, Wolfe said. So he has decided to use that. Cramer blinked. Decided. What the hell are you talking about? Wolfe's voice remained calm. Gelsamine is an alkaloid derived from yellow jessamine. It can be lethal in minute quantity. Its use in homicide is uncommon, but not unknown. I have encountered it. Cramer's hand tightened on the folder. That's the point. Vollmer says it's the same as in one of your old case files. He called it by your name. He said, and I quote, Wolfe had a gelsamine case years ago. I stared at Wolfe. Did you? Wolfe did not look at me. I did. Cramer leaned forward. So I got 2 dead men in one night. One stabbed, one poisoned. Both had complaints against you. One had your name in his pocket. The other was poisoned with something tied to your history. And I got a witness that puts you near Brand's place earlier today. That last part hit like a slap. A witness puts Wolfe where? At Brand's apartment building, Cramer said. Wolfe's face remained composed. Where is Mr. Brand's apartment? West 32nd, Cramer said. Not far. 5th floor walk. Up. A neighbor saw you on the landing this afternoon. I made a sound. That's impossible. Wolfe hasn't climbed 5 flights of stairs since the Spanish-American War. Cramer looked at me. He didn't climb. He took a car. I don't mean a taxi. A private car. Black. The doorman from the building across the street saw him get out. Go in, come out, big man. Dark coat, hat stood out. He remembered the face from the papers. He remembered the size, he was sure. Wolfe's voice was steady. Your witness is mistaken. Cramer snorted. Wolfe, you were seen. Wolfe looked at him. Inspector, you may refrain from incompetence by asking a more basic question. Did I meet Leo Brand today? Cramer stared. Did you? Wolfe said. Yes. I turned and stared at Wolfe. You met him. Wolfe's eyes moved to me, and there was faint irritation there, like a teacher correcting a slow student. Yes, Archie. I met him. Where? I demanded. At his apartment, Wolfe said. I opened my mouth. It stayed open. My brain rummaged for explanations. It came up with none that were suitable for public use. Cramer pounced. And you didn't think to tell me that when I hauled you in for Ashby? I have not been asked, Wolfe said. You were too busy jingling your handcuffs. Cramer's face went dark. What was the meeting about? Wolfe folded his cuffed hands on the table, the metal catching the overhead light. Mr. Brand came to my house this morning at 11. He sought my assistance. Assistance with what? Cramer demanded. Wolfe's tone was formal, with an attempt at coercion. He claimed that someone had approached him and made demands. He wished to know how to respond. I leaned in. Who approached him? Wolfe looked at me. He did not say. Or rather, he did not say with certainty. He said he had received a call, anonymous, and then a visit from a man who gave him a message. Cramer's fingers drummed on the folder. And the message was what? Wolfe's eyes narrowed slightly. That Mr. Brand should file complaints against me. The room went still. I felt the skin on my arms tighten. Wait. Brand told you somebody wanted him to complain about you? Yes, Wolfe said. He found it absurd. He also found it troubling, because the man who visited him knew details about his work and his habits. He feared consequences. Cramer's voice was rough. And you went to his apartment? Yes, Wolfe said. He requested it. He said he had been warned not to bring me to his office. He said his office was watched. Cramer glared. Why would he say that? Wolfe's gaze was steady. Because he believed it, and because it was plausible. I said, Wolfe, why did you go? You never go. Wolfe looked at me as if I had asked why water was wet. Because the situation was irregular, because someone was attempting to manipulate the apparatus of the law, because it was directed at me, and because, however much I detest leaving this house, I detest being maneuvered even more. Cramer threw up a hand. So you went, and then a few hours later he's dead, poisoned, and your witness sees you there. You see the problem? Wolfe's voice was cold. The problem is that you are willing to accept the appearance of evidence as evidence. The second problem is that I was foolish enough to indulge Mr. Brand's request without adequate precautions. That was Wolfe admitting error, which was as rare as a polite cab driver. Cramer leaned closer. What happened in the apartment? Wolfe answered as if reciting. Mr. Brand offered me a chair. It was inadequate. I remained standing. He spoke at length about his duties, his anxieties, and the anonymous pressure. He produced a paper, a copy of his complaint. It was not filed at that time. He asked my advice. I advised him to refrain from filing anything until we had identified the source of the coercion. Number, did you argue? Number, I said. Did he mention Leonard Ashby? Wolfe's eyes shifted to me. He did. He said Mr. Ashby had urged him to file the complaint. He said Ashby had called him twice. Cramer's head snapped up. Ashby urged him. Yes, Wolfe said. Mr. Brand said Mr. Ashby claimed he was acting as a concerned citizen. Mr. Brand did not believe him. Cramer's eyes burned. Then why didn't you tell me this when we were at your house? Wolfe's voice remained steady. Because you did not ask what you should have asked. You asked only how quickly you could inconvenience me. Cramer swore under his breath. He stood up, walked to the door, opened it, and spoke to the uniformed man outside. His voice was low, but I caught enough to know he was ordering someone to get Volmer back on the phone and to send officers to Ashby's office again. He shut the door, came back, and sat down heavily. All right, he said. You met Brand. You say he was being pressured to file a complaint against you. You say Ashby was involved. That's your story. It is not a story, Wolfe said. It is an account. Cramer's eyes slid to me. Archie, you knew about this. I shook my head hard. Not a word. If I had known, I would have locked Wolfe in the plant room and thrown away the key. Wolfe's gaze cut to me. Archie, I'm just keeping the record straight, I said. This is a disaster, Cramer said. It gets better. The doorman who saw you, he also saw another man, about 10 minutes after you left. A thin man in a cap, went in, came out. The doorman says the thin man looked nervous. Wolfe's eyes sharpened. That is significant. Did your doorman mention this before, or only after being encouraged? Cramer scowled. He mentioned it. We asked what else he saw. He didn't hide it. He just didn't think it mattered until we asked. I leaned back in my chair and let that sit. A thin, nervous man 10 minutes after Wolfe. That could be a coincidence. It could also be the actual poisoner, strolling in after the big famous suspect had conveniently warmed the stage. Archie Goodwin, private citizen, was smelling framing. A strong smell too. It had layers. Cramer tapped the folder. The toxin is rare. Volmer says whoever used it knew what he was doing. Brand's coffee cup had residue. He was drinking when he died. No sign of struggle. Wolfe said. Then he was given the poison by someone he trusted, or someone who presented it plausibly. Like you, Cramer snapped. Wolfe's eyes went flat. Inspector, you are emotional. It does not help. Cramer's face reddened. Don't talk to me about emotional. I got 2 bodies on Christmas Eve and my best headache sitting in front of me wearing handcuffs. I leaned forward. Cramer, you said the toxin. Links to Wolfe's old file. How does Volmer know that? Cramer's eyes shifted. Because Wolfe testified in that case. Because it was in the papers, because he remembers it. Wolfe said quietly. It was not merely in the papers. The method was known only to a small number of people. The toxin was prepared in a particular way. If Volmer has recognized it, then the poisoner is either reckless or deliberately drawing attention. Deliberately drawing attention, I said, to Wolfe. Cramer's mouth tightened. You keep saying framing like it's a fact. It's not a fact yet, I said. It's a smell. It's a strong smell. 2 complainants in one day. One stabbed, one poisoned, both pointing at Wolfe, and the poison happens to be tied to Wolfe's history. That's too neat. Wolfe looked at me with a faint nod, approval disguised as tolerance. Cramer said. Neat or not, I got procedure. I got a murdered permit officer and a warrant already signed for Ashby. I can't just let Wolfe stroll out because you don't like the pattern. Wolfe's voice was measured. Then you will keep me, and you will be wrong. The only question is how much damage you will do before you accept it. Cramer pushed his chair back, stood, and paced a step. I don't like this, he said. I don't like it at all, but I got to hold you, at least until I can talk to Volmer again and check your story about Brand and Ashby, and I got to send a report to the district attorney. If he decides to charge you for Brand too, you'll be going downtown. My throat tightened. Cramer, you can't put him in a cell. He'll explode. Wolfe's eyes flicked to me. Archie, he's built for rugs and chairs and cooked food. Cramer looked at Wolfe with bleak sympathy. Nero, I'll do what I can, but I can't make it go away. Wolfe's chin lifted. Your effort is irrelevant. Your competence is required. You will question your witness. You will identify the thin man. You will examine the complaints filed by Ashby and Brand. You will ascertain who directed them. If you do these things with diligence, you may salvage some fraction of your dignity. Cramer barked a laugh without humor. You got nerve. Wolfe's tone was mild. I have nerve because I am correct. Cramer went to the door and opened it. Stebbins, he called. A moment later, Stebbins appeared, looking even more apologetic than before. Take him, Cramer said, and his voice caught slightly on the word, him. Hold him, treat him decent. Stebbins nodded. Yes, sir. I stood up fast. Hold it, Wolfe's lawyer. Wolfe said, Mr. Parker. Cramer nodded. Call him. You can call him. You can call anybody. But Wolfe stays. Stebbins moved to Wolfe's side. Wolfe rose from the chair with a slow dignity that made the handcuffs look like a childish prank. He did not glance at me. He did not need to. He knew I would follow, Cramer said. Archie, you can walk out. Don't make trouble. Meme, I said. I'm the soul of good behavior. Cramer's eyes narrowed. Listen to me. If you want to help Wolfe, you keep your head. You go home. Check anything that might be missing. Anything that could tie into this poison business. You understand. That landed. You think somebody got into Wolfe's files? Cramer's mouth tightened. I think somebody knew enough to use that toxin and make it point at him. That knowledge could have come from somewhere. I'm telling you what I'd do if I were you. Wolfe spoke to me then, his voice calm and firm. Archie, go home. I stared at him. You're going to a cell, and you want me to go home and enjoy the holiday. I want you to use your brain, Wolfe said. That is its function. Stebbins touched Wolfe's elbow, lightly guiding him toward the hall. Wolfe did not resist. He walked as if he were being escorted to a formal dinner instead of a holding cell. That was Wolfe. Pride was not a pose for him. It was his skeleton. At the doorway, he paused and looked back at Cramer. Inspector, he said. You will also do one other thing. You will discover who benefits from my humiliation. Cramer's face tightened. I'm working on it. Wolfe nodded once. Then he turned and went out with Stebbins, the cuffs glinting under the harsh precinct lights. I stood there a second, staring at the empty chair Wolfe had used, and felt a cold anger settle in my chest. Somebody was building a case against Wolfe, piece by piece, and doing it with a craftsman's touch. A note here, a complaint there. A witness who sees what he needs to see. A poison chosen not just to kill but to point. Cramer watched me. Go, he said, before I change my mind and keep you too. I left the room and headed for the desk, found a phone, and called Nathaniel Parker's number. It rang too many times, then a sleepy voice answered, and I gave him the essentials in a hurry that made me sound like I was selling fire insurance. When I hung up, I went out into the cold again. The city's holiday glitter looked cheap now. I hailed a cab, gave our address, and sat back, thinking hard. If somebody had used a toxin tied to Wolfe's past case files, the simplest way to do it was to study those files. Wolfe kept records. He kept them like a banker keeps bonds. They were in the brownstone, and the brownstone had been empty of its two main guardians for hours. When the cab stopped in front of our house, I paid and jumped out. The street was quiet, lit by the glow from windows and the soft fall of snow. The steps to the front door looked the same as always, but I had the uneasy sense that the city itself was leaning in to listen. I rang the bell. Fritz opened the door at once. His face showed relief, then immediate indignation. "Where is Mr. Wolfe?" he demanded. "Not home," I said. "And dinner." Fritz's eyes flashed. "It is being kept warm. It is also being offended. What has happened?" I stepped inside, shut the door, and lowered my voice. "Two dead men, one stabbed, one poisoned, and they are trying to hang it on Wolfe." Fritz pressed his lips together, the way he did when he wanted to say the world was rotten, but did not wish to insult the roast in the oven. "Theodore," he said abruptly. "He has been strange all afternoon." My head snapped up. "Strange how?" Fritz hesitated. He asked questions about the cabinets, about Mr. Wolfe's old papers. I told him it is not his concern. My pulse quickened. "Where is he now?" Fritz looked toward the stairs. "In the plant room, or he was. I have not seen him for an hour." I did not take off my coat. I went straight through the hall to the office door, switched on the light, and crossed to the file cabinets that held Wolfe's records. The drawers were closed. The labels were neat. Everything looked normal. I knelt and ran my fingers along the edge of one drawer. There was the faintest mark, a fresh, bright scratch on the metal near the lock, too small to notice, unless you were looking for it, and too new to belong to history. I looked up at Fritz. "Has anybody been in here?" Fritz's face tightened. "No one, not with my knowledge." I stood, reached for the drawer, and pulled. It opened smoothly. Inside, a row of folders sat as orderly as soldiers. One space was empty. The label tabs marched along, and then there was a gap where a folder should have been. My throat went dry. I leaned closer and read the tabs. The missing one would have been between two, I recognized. One of them was marked, in Wolfe's big, careful hand, Jessamine. Someone had taken it. Someone had reached into Wolfe's past and pulled out the one thing that could make a poison look like Wolfe's signature. He straightened slowly, and the house felt colder than the street outside. "Well," I said to Fritz, and my voice sounded thin to my own ears. "Merry Christmas." Chapter 3, A Cell and a Calendar. If you want to see what Christmas Eve looks like without the tinsel, step into a quiet house where the roast is ready. The lights are soft, and the man who owns the place is spending the night in a police cell because somebody decided to use him as a holiday decoration. I stood in the office with the file drawer still open, staring at the gap where the folder labeled Jessamine ought to have been, and I felt the same kind of irritation you get when you reach for your hat and discover someone has walked off with your head. Wolfe's files were not just paper. They were his memory, indexed and boxed. Taking one was like stealing a tooth. Fritz had come in behind me and was looking at the empty space as if it were a burn mark on the rug. "This is not possible," he said. "It's possible," I told him. "It's done." He drew himself up, offended at the universe. Fritz Brenner took pride in our brownstone the way a king takes pride in his crown. The idea that somebody could slip in and lift a folder was insulting enough. The idea that it happened while Wolfe was out, in handcuffs, was worse. "I have not left the house," Fritz said. "Not for one moment. I have been in the kitchen." "Yes, but the kitchen door is closed," I would hear. "You would hear most things," I agreed. "But a man who knows the house and wants paper, not silver, doesn't have to make noise. He only has to be careful." Fritz's eyes went toward the stairs, and his mouth tightened. "Theodore," he said. I had been thinking the same name. Theodore Horstman was a fine orchid man, a grim one, and he had access to the house on terms that were more intimate than most. Wolfe trusted him with the plants. Wolfe did not trust him with anything else. That was not an insult. It was policy. "Where is he?" I asked. Fritz hesitated. "He was in the plant room. He is often in the plant room, but I have not heard him for some time." That was as close to worry as Fritz liked to come. "All right," I said. "I'll go ask him whether he has been stealing from his employer's file cabinet on Christmas Eve." I went up the stairs 2 at a time and pushed open the door to the plant room. The first thing that hit me was the heat and the damp. The second was the smell, the clean, wet smell of moss and bark and potting medium, and underneath it the faint perfume of the orchids. Wolfe had built that room like a temple, and Theodore served in it as if he had taken vows. The benches were in order. The pots were in their neat rows. The lights were on. The humidifiers murmured. It looked perfect. Theodore was not there. I stood a moment and listened. No footsteps, no muttering, no clink of tools. I walked along the benches, pretending I knew what I was looking at. A few blossoms drooped in that way. They do when they are thinking about it, but nothing looked disturbed. Theodore had not left in a panic. If he left at all, he left like a man leaving his office. I checked the small room beyond where he kept supplies. His coat was gone. That did not prove anything. A man is entitled to a coat. But Theodore had a habit of hanging it on the same hook. Wolfe had habits. I had habits. Fritz had habits. Theodore did too. When one of those habits went missing at the same time as a folder labeled Jessamine, you began to count. I went back downstairs and found Fritz in the kitchen. The warmth and the smell of food struck me hard. I had not eaten since noon. The roast was resting. The gravy was being coaxed. Fritz was still in his apron, and the look on his face suggested he would like to roast the entire police department with onions. "Theodore is not upstairs," I said. Fritz's nostrils flared. "Then he is in his room." Theodore had a small room on the top floor. Wolfe found it efficient to keep his plant man close, especially in winter. I went up again, this time to the top, and knocked on Theodore's door. No answer. I tried the knob, locked. "All right," I muttered. "We can do this politely, or we can do it my way." My way involved a spare key, which Fritz had because Fritz had all keys, including the ones you hoped he did not. He brought it up without comment. He did not like this any more than I did. Theodore's room was neat. Bed made, clothes folded. A small stack of horticultural books on the table. No sign of struggle, no sign of hurried packing, but his overnight bag was gone. I stood there with my hands on my hips, looking at the empty hook where the bag usually hung, and I felt the case tightening around us like a rope. Theodore might be running because he was guilty, or he might be running because somebody frightened him, or he might be running because somebody offered him money, or he might be running because his aunt was sick. But the timing was ugly. "We will inform Inspector Cramer," Fritz said stiffly. "We will," I agreed, "and we will also inform Wolfe's lawyer, and Wolfe, and anybody else who has ears." Fritz's eyes flashed. "And dinner?" I looked at him. "If I sit down and eat Wolfe's Christmas roast while he's in a cell, I will choke on it." Fritz drew himself up. "It will be kept warm," he said, and it sounded like a threat. I went downstairs, used the office phone, and got Cramer after a short battle with a desk sergeant who enjoyed his own authority. "Cramer," I said when I got him, "your rare toxin case file just walked out of Wolfe's cabinet." There was a pause. "What are you talking about?" "The folder," I said. "The Jessamine folder, missing, and our plant man, Theodore Horstman, appears to have taken a holiday trip without leaving a forwarding address." Cramer swore quietly but with feeling. "You sure it's gone? I'm looking at the empty space. Don't touch anything else." He snapped. "Don't go chasing Horstman. I'll send someone." "I'm already chasing," I told him. "Not Horstman. The truth. Where's Wolfe?" "He's being held," Cramer said. His voice was tired. "Archie, don't make this worse." "I'm incapable of making it better," I said. "I'm coming down with Parker," I said. I said. "Fine," he grunted, "but don't start swinging." I hung up and found Parker on the phone line Fritz kept for people with legal careers and fragile nerves. Nathaniel Parker was awake now and fully irritated, which was his natural state. "I'm on my way," he said. "Goodwin, tell Wolfe to keep his mouth shut." "That's like telling a volcano to keep quiet," I said. "But I'll try." We met outside the precinct. Parker had his hat low, his scarf tight, and his face set in the expression of a man walking into a swamp with his best shoes. He nodded once, briskly, and we went in. Cramer was waiting in a corridor. He looked like he had not sat down since we left our house. His tie was crooked. His eyes were bloodshot. Christmas Eve had been squeezed out of him. "Parker," he said, and then, to me, "You got more surprises." "Only the kind you don't like," I said. Parker cut in. "Where is my client?" Cramer jerked his head toward a door. "Back." We went through. The holding area was a long room with barred cells along one wall and a bench along the other, and the air smelled like disinfectant and old despair. A couple of men were on the bench, one drunk and one angry. The drunk was snoring. The angry man was staring at nothing. In the farthest cell, on a bench that looked designed for punishment, Nero Wolfe sat like a monument that had been installed by mistake. His hands were free now, but his dignity was still cuffed. His hat was on the bench beside him. His coat was folded with care. He sat upright, eyes half-lidded, as if he were waiting for a waiter who had forgotten his order. When he saw Parker and me, His eyes opened fully. "Mr. Parker," Wolfe said. His voice was calm. "This environment is repellent." Parker gripped the bars with both hands. "Wolfe, for once in your life, do as I say. Say nothing. Answer nothing. Let me handle it." Wolfe regarded him. "I will answer what I choose." Parker's jaw tightened. "That is exactly what I feared." I leaned in close to the bars. "Wolfe, we found your Jessamine file missing." That got him. His eyebrows lifted. "Not much, but enough." "Missing," he repeated. "Gone," I said. "And Theodore is gone too." Wolfe's eyes narrowed, and for a second the cell seemed too small for the force of his disapproval. "Horseman," he said. "Imbecile." Cramer, who had followed us in and was standing a few paces back, snorted. "So you admit he had access?" "He has access to my plants," Wolfe said, "not to my files. If he has taken that folder, then he has been bribed, coerced, or frightened, or he is, as I said, an imbecile." Parker spoke through clenched teeth. "We will discuss horticultural betrayals later. Wolfe, I need to know what you did today, every step." Wolfe looked at him. "You will not interrogate me in a cage, obtain my release." Parker turned his head sharply toward Cramer. "You are holding him on what?" "Exactly." Cramer's mouth tightened. "Ashby, the stabbing. We got a warrant, and now we got Brand, the poison. We're still sorting." Parker's eyes flashed. "Sorting on Christmas Eve." Cramer spread his hands, helpless and angry at the same time. "You want me to ignore 2 dead bodies because it's a holiday?" "No," Parker snapped. "I want you to use your brain." Wolfe lifted a hand. "Enough, Inspector. I will make this simple for you. Provide me with books and silence." Cramer stared. "Books, yes," Wolfe said. "I will not spend the night with that man snoring. I require reading material." The drunk on the bench snorted loudly, as if answering. Cramer rubbed his forehead. "Wolfe, you're in a holding cell." "I am aware," Wolfe said. "That is why I require books. The situation is unpleasant." Parker muttered, "This is insanity." Wolfe's gaze moved to me. "Archie." "Yes." "You will investigate," Wolfe said. "You will begin with Mr. Brand." "I already started," I said. "Brand was pressured to file a complaint against you," you said. "And you told him not to file until we found who was pressuring him." "Yes," Wolfe said. "And that makes his death more significant. The coercion is central." Cramer's eyes narrowed. "Wolfe, you told me you met Brand at his apartment. Why didn't Archie know?" Wolfe's gaze did not soften. "Because I did not tell him. I judged it unnecessary." I snorted. "Your judgment is taking a beating." Wolfe ignored that. "Archie, you will revisit the meeting. You will learn what you can about Brand's activities. You will also discover why Mr. Brand would appear to have a motive to accuse me." "I already have a hint," I said. Wolfe looked at me patient, which was as close as he came to indulgent. "Proceed." I glanced at Cramer, then back at Wolfe. "Brand denied you a permit a few weeks ago, didn't he?" Cramer's head snapped around. "Permit? What permit?" Wolfe's mouth tightened slightly. "Yes, he did." Parker stared. "Wolfe, you never mentioned a permit." "You did not ask about permits," Wolfe said. "You asked about silence." Cramer leaned forward, suspicion sharpening. "What permit?" Wolfe spoke, as if reciting a dull detail. "A structural permit. I sought authorization for a modest alteration to my property." "Modest," I echoed. When Wolfe says modest, it usually involves moving a wall. Wolfe ignored me. Mr. Brand refused. Cramer's eyes gleamed. "So now we got motive." Wolfe's eyes went flat. "We have an appearance of motive. It is neat." I nodded. "Too neat." Cramer glared at me. "Don't start that again." "It's the truth," I said. "A permit denial is the kind of thing a lazy mind grabs. Wolfe doesn't stab people over paperwork. He doesn't even go to the permit office. He sends somebody." Wolfe's voice was precise. Mr. Brand did not merely refuse. He behaved improperly. He hinted that refusal could become approval under certain circumstances. Cramer blinked. You mean he wanted a bribe? Wolfe inclined his head. I mean he suggested it. Parker's face tightened. Wolfe, did you report him? No, Wolfe said. I declined to indulge him. I have no interest in engaging with municipal corruption unless I am forced, I said. And now somebody is forcing you. Wolfe's eyes held mine. Precisely. Cramer's lips thinned. All right, that makes it worse for you, Wolfe. Not better. A permit officer denies your permit. You go see him. He winds up poisoned. And you tell me he tried to shake you down. That's a story a jury can chew. Wolfe's voice was cold. Inspector, your imagination is vulgar. Cramer swore under his breath. He turned to Parker. You can file motions tomorrow tonight. He stays. Parker's face went pale with anger. Cramer, at least move him somewhere decent. Decent, Cramer said bitterly, in a precinct. Wolfe lifted his chin. Then provide books. Cramer stared at him a second, then turned to a uniformed man. Get him something to read. From the desk, the lost and found. I don't care. Wolfe's voice followed him. Not newspapers. Books. Cramer threw a hand up and walked away, muttering. Parker leaned close to the bars again. Wolfe, do not speak to anyone without me. Do you understand? Wolfe's eyes were steady. I understand your anxiety. It is not shared. Parker's mouth tightened. Goodwin, you will keep him from talking, I said. Sure, I'll muzzle him with a cookbook. Wolfe looked at me. Archie, go home then go out. Speak to Mr. Brand's colleagues. Examine the permit matter. Also ascertain the nature of the toxin. I know, I said. Jessamine, your file is gone. Wolfe's eyes narrowed. And that file may contain more than the toxin. It may contain names. That hit me like a cold hand. Wolfe's old cases were full of names. People who had reason to hate him, fear him, envy him, or want him out of the way. If someone had lifted that folder, they might not have been after the chemistry. They might have been after the list. Parker pulled me back by my sleeve. Come on. We can't do anything here. Wolfe, you want anything else? A pillow, a chef. Wolfe's eyes were heavy, lidded again. Silence, competence, and a chair that does not insult my spine. Put it on the city budget, I said. We left him there, sitting like a wronged emperor, and I felt something twist in my chest. I had seen Wolfe irritated, furious, triumphant, bored, and satisfied, but I had never seen him caged. It was like seeing a cathedral used as a storage shed. Outside the holding area, Parker cornered Cramer near a desk and started arguing law with him. I let them go. Parker could talk until the building collapsed, and Cramer could grind his teeth through it. It might help. It might not. Either way, the case was not going to solve itself while they debated procedure. I went back out into the cold, found a cab, and went home. The brownstone looked the same from the outside. Dignified, brown, stubborn. Inside, Fritz had the lights on as if he were defying the night. The smell of dinner was still there, warm and accusing. Fritz met me in the hall. Mr. Goodwin, Wolfe is still in a cell, I said. He wants books, silence, and a better chair in that order. Fritz's eyes flashed. Books, silence, this is what he thinks of. It's what he needs, I said. Any sign of Theodore? Fritz shook his head, tight-lipped. Number all right, I said. I'm going out again. Keep the house the way Wolfe likes it. That is your revenge. Fritz's mouth tightened. It will be done. I paused at the dining room door. The table was set for one. Fritz had set it anyway. The plates were warm. The silver gleamed. The chair at the head of the table looked lonely in a way that made me angry. I grabbed a piece of bread from the sideboard and ate it standing up because sitting would have felt like surrender. Then I went out again. The first stop was the city permit office, which was as festive as a filing cabinet. A uniformed guard at the entrance looked at me with the deep suspicion reserved for citizens. I showed him a card, not Wolfe's, mine, and I smiled in the way that suggests you will either be his friend or his problem. Inside, clerks moved papers around like ants moving crumbs. Everybody was in a hurry to go home, which meant everybody was slow. I found a man at a counter who looked like he had been born behind it. "I need to see the file on a permit denial," I said. "Signed by Leo Brand." The clerk's eyes flicked up, wary. "Brand is dead." "Yes," I said. "That's why I'm interested." He frowned. "You a cop, number, then you don't get files." I leaned closer. "My employer is in a holding cell because somebody killed Brand and is trying to make it look like he did it. If you want your office to avoid being dragged into a murder investigation, you will be helpful. That got him, not sympathy, but fear. Fear is a civic virtue." He lowered his voice. "What permit?" "West 35th, I said. "Private residence, structural alteration denied by Brand." The clerk hesitated, then nodded and vanished into the back. While he was gone, I looked around. Brand's name was on a small plaque on a desk in the corner, now empty. A few people glanced that way and then away, as if the desk might still be contagious. The clerk came back with a folder. He slid it across the counter, without meeting my eyes. I opened it and scanned. The application was for an alteration to the rear of the brownstone, connected with ventilation and light. Wolfe wanted to adjust the plant room's environment. That was not vanity. For Wolfe, it was religion. The denial was signed by Leo Brand. In the notes, in a cramped hand, was a phrase that made my mouth tighten. "Applicant uncooperative," suggested alternative review. Alternative review, that could mean a second opinion. It could also mean a private conversation in a hallway. It was the kind of phrase a careful man writes when he wants to remember a bribe offer without writing the word. I asked, "Who worked with Brand?" The clerk jerked his head toward the empty desk. "Marion Klein. She's in charge now. She's gone for the day." "Where can I find her?" The clerk's eyes widened. "It's Christmas Eve." "I noticed," I said. He gave me an address in Queens with the reluctance of a man handing over his own paycheck. I thanked him, tucked the information away, and left. Next stop was Brand's apartment building on West 32nd. The street was quiet, the windows lit, the holiday lights twinkling in a way that felt rude. The building itself was a narrow walk, up with a tired vestibule, and a doorman who looked like he wished he had chosen a different career. His eyes went wary the moment he saw me. "I already talked to the police," he said. "I'm not the police," I told him. "That's the advantage. They can't afford to listen. I can." He snorted. "You the guy from Wolfe's place?" "That's me." He folded his arms. "Wolfe came. I saw him." "You saw a big man," I said. "Did you see his face well enough to swear on it?" He hesitated. That hesitation was worth money. "I seen him in the papers," he said. "I seen him on the street once." "Hard to miss. Hard to miss," I agreed. "What time did he come?" The doorman looked up at the ceiling as if the answer were written there. "Maybe 2:30. "And when did he leave?" "Not long. 20 minutes, half hour." I nodded. "Did anyone else come after?" He hesitated again, and this time his eyes shifted away. "The cops asked that," he said. "I told them there was a skinny guy, capped like a delivery man, only no package came in maybe 10 minutes after Wolfe left." "Did you see him leave?" "Yes, fast." "Anyone else?" I asked. He licked his lips. "There was a car came later. Black car. Same kind as Wolfe's, maybe. A big guy got out, went in." My stomach tightened. "Later as in when?" "Closer to 4, he said. I kept my voice level. "Did you see the face?" He shook his head. "Not good." He had his hat low. But he was big. I felt the rope tighten another notch. If a big man came at 4 after Wolfe had come at 2, then somebody was staging the scene. A second appearance. A second witness. A second chance to be seen. "Did he leave?" I asked. "Yes," the doorman said. "He left quick too." "Was the skinny guy with him?" The doorman shook his head. Number different. All right, I said. One more thing. Did Brand have visitors earlier today morning? The doorman shrugged. Lots of folks, tenants, delivery, you know? I nodded. Thanks. He stared at me. You really think Wolfe didn't do it? I think somebody wants you to think he did, I said. And they're using your eyes to do it. He frowned uneasy. People do not like being told their eyes can be rented. I left him and went upstairs. The police had sealed Brand's apartment earlier, but the tape was gone now, and a uniformed officer stood by the door, a bored sentinel. I showed him Cramer's card and my own confidence. I'm here at the inspector's request, I said. He frowned, then shrugged and let me in. Procedures bend when you say the right name. The apartment was small, neat and dead. The body was gone, but the shape of the scene remained. A coffee cup on the table, a chair slightly angled, a book open on the sofa. The air still had that faint bitter tang of something chemical that had no business near coffee. I went to the desk. Brand had a desk calendar, the kind with a page for each day, and it was open to December 24th. A man who lives by permits, lives by appointments. I leaned over and read. There were entries in small, careful writing. 11 o'clock, Klein 12:30 Ashby Call, 2 o'clock, NW 340L, 4 o'clock NW. 5:10 Drop My Breath Court, 2 entries for NW, 1 at 2, 1 at 4. Wolfe had told Cramer he met Brand at his apartment this afternoon. The doorman placed him around 2. That matched the first NW. The second NW at 4 matched the doorman's black car, and the second big man. I stood there a moment, letting it sink in. Somebody had not only arranged for Wolfe to be seen, they had arranged for Wolfe to be seen twice. The second time was the deadly one, the one that put poison in coffee and left a rare toxin that would send the medical examiner digging into Wolfe's past. That was framing with a craftsman's touch. I looked closer at the other entries. 340L. It could be Leonard Ashby, or it could be a lawyer, a lover, or a locksmith. But the entry 12:30 Ashby Call was too direct to ignore. Brand had been talking to Ashby the same day Ashby got stabbed. Then there was 5:10 Drop. Drop what? Drop where? Drop to whom? I turned the page back to the day before. More entries. Names, times, and on the margin, in a different pencil, a note that made my skin tighten. Horstman. It was written with a question mark. Theodore Horstman. Our Theodore. I stared at that word until the room felt colder. I heard footsteps in the hall and straightened, snapping the calendar closed as if it might leap at me. The uniformed officer was at the door, peering in. You about done? He asked. Almost, I said. And my voice came out steady because fear is useful only if you can hold it. I walked out, down the stairs, and into the street where the holiday lights were still blinking, like nothing had happened. I stood under them, holding my breath in the cold, and knew two things with the same certainty. First, Wolfe had been right. This was not just about poison, it was about names. Second, somebody had planned a second meeting with NW at 4 o'clock, and whoever showed up then was not Nero Wolfe. And Brand's calendar had just whispered the name of our missing orchid man into my ear. I headed for a phone, because I needed to tell Cramer, and I needed to tell Wolfe's lawyer, and I needed, most of all, to find Theodore Horstman before someone else did. Halfway down the block, my pocket began to vibrate. The phone was ringing. I took it out, looked at the screen, and felt my stomach drop again. It was our house number, Fritz, he answered. Fritz. His voice was tight. Mr. Goodwin, there is a man here. He says he must speak to you at once. A man, I said. Who? Fritz swallowed. And when Fritz swallowed, you knew the roast was about to burn. He says, Fritz whispered, that he has Mr. Wolfe's missing folder. Chapter 4, the borrowed poison. Fritz's voice on the phone had a special quality when things were wrong. He did not raise it. He did not add drama. He simply made every syllable precise, as if he were placing knives on a tray. "There is a man here," he had said. "He says he must speak to you at once. He says he has Mr. Wolfe's missing folder." I did not ask Fritz what the man looked like. If Fritz was letting him stand in the front hall on Christmas Eve, he was either respectable, armed, or both. "Tell him to wait," I said. "Tell him not to touch anything." "He is touching nothing," Fritz replied. "But he is breathing. I'll be there in 10 minutes. I got a cab and made it in 8, which required a combination of money, urgency, and the kind of driving that makes a man promise never to do it again while he is doing it. The city lights still twinkled, and people still carried packages, but the shine had drained out of it for me. A murder case has a way of turning holiday cheer into cheap paper. When I hit our stoop, I saw immediately that Fritz had not exaggerated. The front door was open a crack, just enough for him to be able to close it fast if he had to. That meant he was on guard. Inside, in the warm glow of the hall lights, a man stood with his hat in his hands, like a boy waiting outside the principal's office. He was in uniform, and he was young enough to still have the hopeful look that the job beats out of most men by 30. His coat was damp from snow, and his eyes were darting around as if he expected the walls to accuse him. Fritz stood a few feet away, straight-backed, arms folded, the expression of a man who has hosted criminals in better manners and would prefer not to repeat the experience. The young cop saw me and swallowed. "Mr. Goodwin?" "That depends," I said. "If you're here to arrest me, you'll have to take a number. If you're here to sell calendars, you're late." He tried a smile. It failed. "I'm Officer Lafferty, property clerk, 20th Precinct." That was a surprise. Property clerks usually did not come calling on Christmas Eve unless somebody had lost something important, like their conscience. "I'm Archie Goodwin," I said. "What have you got?" He lifted his right hand, and I saw a manila folder clutched like a life preserver. It was one of Wolfe's. I knew the look of them the way a man knows his own socks. The tab label was in Wolfe's heavy, careful hand. Jessamine. My stomach tightened. "You brought that from where?" I demanded. His eyes flicked to Fritz and back to me. "From the precinct." Fritz made a small sound of outrage, as if the precinct were a pigsty, and the folder had been dragged through it. I took the folder from Lafferty's hand. I did not open it yet. I held it like it might leave a stain. "Start at the beginning," I said. "And make it good." Lafferty licked his lips. "This afternoon, before you came down, there was a request. Evidence from an old case, the one with the plant poison." "Gelsamine," I said. He nodded quickly. "Yes, that I didn't know the name until Volmer called and asked what the property room log showed. When the doctor asks, people jump." Fritz's eyes narrowed. "Dr. Volmer called the precinct this evening," Lafferty said, "after they found the permit guy." "Leo Brand, the second body," I said. "How does my employer's folder get into your precinct?" Lafferty hesitated. "It was brought in with other papers. Not logged, not supposed to be there. It was in a brown envelope. No stamp. Hand-delivered, not mailed. Just your address and Goodwin written on it. It showed up on a desk in the back room that day. Shift men pass 100 times, the kind of place you can drop something and pretend it arrived by itself." Fritz's nostrils flared. "In my house, no one writes such an envelope." "I know," I said, "and I know Wolfe does not mail his own files to the police." Lafferty's voice dropped. "I saw the folder tab. I know Wolfe's handwriting from those cards, you see. I knew it was wrong. I figured it was part of this mess, so I took it." "You stole it," I said. He flinched. "I borrowed it. I was going to put it back. But then I saw on the news, Wolfe got arrested, and I thought if this was a frame, the last thing you need is Wolfe's own folder, sitting in our back room like evidence." That was a reasonable thought for a young cop, which made him an endangered species. I looked at Fritz. "Coffee," I said. Fritz's face tightened, but he turned and went to the kitchen without a word. He would bring coffee because the situation required it, not because he approved of the company. I gestured to Lafferty, "Office." He followed me into the front room. The desk lamp cast a pool of light on the polished wood, and Wolfe's chair sat there empty, the big throne waiting for its occupant. Seeing it made my teeth clench. I sat at my desk. Lafferty perched on a chair as if afraid it might bite him. I placed the folder on the blotter, but kept my hand on it because I did not like the idea of it wandering again. "All right," I said. "Tell me about the evidence request. Some items from big cases, special poisons, odd stuff." The gelsamine vial from that old Wolfe case was in there, sealed, tagged. "It's been sitting for years." "Until this week," I said. He nodded. "Tuesday. Someone signed it out." I leaned forward. "Who?" He glanced at the folder as if the name might jump out of it. "Detective Kendall." I blinked. "Kendall from Homicide." "Yes." That was interesting, and not in a pleasant way. Detective Lionel Kendall was one of those middleweight men who seemed built to carry bad news. He was competent, careful, and he had the distinct drawback of disliking Wolfe. Not a roaring hate, just a steady resentment, the kind you keep in a drawer and take out on special occasions. "Why would Kendall sign out a sealed vial of gelsamine?" I asked. "That's the thing," Lafferty said quickly. "It wasn't his signature." I stopped. "Whose was it?" He looked miserable. "Lieutenant Rowe. If his name was on a sign, outslip for a rare poison, it meant either the world had shifted or somebody was playing games." "Rowe's name signed out the vial," I said. "That's not the same thing as Rowe doing it." "Yes," Lafferty said. "But Rowe says he didn't. He says Kendall did, and used his name." I stared at him. "And Kendall says what?" Lafferty hesitated. "Kendall says he did sign it out, but he did it because Wolfe requested it." The room felt suddenly smaller. I said slowly, "Wolfe requested a vial of poison from a police evidence locker. That's what Kendall told Cramer," Lafferty said. "Indirectly, he says Wolfe had someone call." I made a sound that was not quite a laugh. "Wolfe does not request poison. Wolfe does not request anything from the property room. Wolfe barely requests anything from the universe, except silence." Fritz came in with coffee on a tray, set it down with the stiff dignity of a man serving soup at a funeral, and left again. He did not look at Lafferty. He could not have looked at him with any politeness. I poured coffee for myself and didn't offer any to Lafferty. He looked like he might spill it on Wolfe's rug, and that would be one crisis too many. "All right," I said. "You brought the folder. Why?" Lafferty's hands twisted together because I heard Kendall talking. He said Wolfe's people asked for the vial, and then he said the poison turned up in a new murder, and now Wolfe's in a cell. Kendall sounded pleased. I didn't like it. "You're a sentimental cop," I said. "That will get you hurt." I also checked the phone log. That got my attention. "What phone log?" "The precinct switchboard," he said. Kendall said Wolfe requested it indirectly, that there was a call earlier in the week, so I looked. There was no call from Wolfe's number. None from your house. None from any number I know tied to Wolfe. I felt a pulse of satisfaction. It was small, but it was there, in a frame-up. Any crack is gold. "You're sure?" I said. "Yes," he insisted. "I checked twice. I'm the property clerk. I have access." "Then Kendall is lying," I said. "Or someone called from a payphone," he said. "Possible," I admitted. "But Wolfe does not use payphones to request poison. He uses payphones to insult me when I am late." Lafferty swallowed. "There was one call to Kendall's desk line, Tuesday morning, from a number that wasn't traced. It came through as a public phone. 2 minutes long." "Where was the payphone?" I asked. He shook his head. "The record didn't show. Just public." That was the kind of detail that makes a man want to kick a switchboard. I stood up. "You did the right thing bringing that here. Now you are going to do the right thing again. You're going to come with me to see Cramer." His eyes widened. "Me? I can't. If Kendall finds out I took this folder and looked at phone logs, I'm finished." "If Kendall finds out you exist," I said, "you're finished. Come on." Fritz intercepted us in the hall, eyes flashing. "Mr. Goodwin, what is this?" "It's Wolfe's file coming home," I said, And this young man is coming with me. Fritz's jaw tightened. Then I will lock the office. You will, I agreed. And Fritz, keep everything exactly as it is. No cleaning, no rearranging, no restoring order. He looked offended. I do not restore order. I maintain it. Tonight, I said. Maintain chaos. It might be evidence. Fritz looked like he wanted to argue, but he only gave a stiff nod. Yes, sir. That was as close as Fritz came to admitting the world could be disordered. Lafferty and I went back into the cold and grabbed a cab. He sat hunched beside me, staring at his hands as if they belonged to someone else. At the precinct, the holiday mood was gone. It was all procedure and fatigue. A pair of uniformed men recognized me and looked away fast. That was sensible. If you look at Archie Goodwin too long on a night like this, you might get assigned a chore. Cramer met us in the corridor outside the interview room. He looked worse than before. His coat was off, his tie looser, and the skin under his eyes had sunk into hollows. When he saw Lafferty in uniform, his eyebrows rose. "What's this?" he demanded. "An honest cop," I said. "Try not to scare him." Cramer's eyes shifted to the folder in my hand. "Where the hell did you get that?" "Your property clerk brought it," I said. "It was sitting in your back room like a Christmas gift." Cramer's face tightened. "Lafferty, is that true?" Lafferty swallowed. "Yes, sir." Cramer took the folder from me, stared at the tab, and then looked at me as if I had set his precinct on fire. "This came from Wolfe's file cabinet," I said. "It was missing now. It's in your building. That's not an accident." Cramer's jaw clenched. "Get in here." We went into the interview room. Cramer shut the door hard enough to make the wall clock jump. He opened the folder, flipped through it, and then tossed it on the table with disgust. "This is Wolfe's work," he growled. "Which is exactly why it was used," I said. Cramer glared at Lafferty. "All right, talk." Lafferty did, haltingly at first, and then faster when he saw Cramer was listening. He told him about the evidence locker, the gelsamine vial, the sign outslip, Kendall's story, and the phone logs. Cramer's face darkened with every sentence. When Lafferty finished, Cramer said, "Kendall told me Wolfe had asked for that vial through an intermediary. He said Wolfe wanted to consult on a plant toxin case and needed the evidence sample for reference." I snorted. "Wolfe consults from his chair. He doesn't borrow poison." Cramer shot me a look. "I know that. But Kendall put it in a way that sounded plausible. Wolfe's got history with that toxin. He made it sound like Wolfe was getting clever." "And you believed him," I said. "I didn't like it," Cramer snapped. "There's a difference." "Phone logs don't like it either," I said. "No call from Wolfe's house. No call from me. And Wolfe has been in his house most of the week. He doesn't do errands." Cramer looked at Lafferty. "You're sure about the logs?" "Yes, sir," Lafferty said. "I checked." Cramer's mouth tightened. "All right, that helps. It also makes this uglier. Somebody used my precinct to get a toxin that ties to Wolfe." I leaned forward, and somebody knew enough to pick that toxin because it was in Wolfe's history. Cramer stared at me. "Meaning what?" "Meaning this is not just a random murderer," I said. "This is somebody who knows Wolfe's methods and Wolfe's past. Somebody who knows how to make a trail look like Wolfe laid it. Somebody close enough to steal a folder from his cabinet and get it into your back room. Somebody close enough to copy Wolfe." Cramer's eyes narrowed. "Copy Wolfe." I nodded. Brand's calendar had 2 entries for W. One at 2, one at 4. Wolfe went at 2. Somebody else came at 4. Big enough to match the doorman's description. Brand wrote it down because he believed it was Wolfe. Cramer's expression changed. He had been trudging through mud, and now he had found a plank. "You went to Brand's place," he said. "Yes," I said, "and if you want that calendar, you should grab it before somebody else does." Cramer reached for the phone on the wall and barked orders to an officer to get over to West 32nd and secure anything with writing on it. He slammed the receiver down and looked at Lafferty. "Now tell me about that sign." "Outslip," Cramer said. "Rowe's name on it." Lafferty said, It's Rowe's name, but it doesn't look like his handwriting. Cramer's eyebrows rose. You sure? I see his signature on forms every day, Lafferty said. This one is close, but not right, like someone practiced. Cramer's face grew tight. So either Rowe is lying, or someone forged him. Or someone forged him and then told Kendall a story, I said. Cramer's eyes flicked to me. Kendall isn't that dumb. No, I agreed. Which means Kendall either knows who did it, or Kendall is being used too, and he's too proud to admit it. Cramer stood up, paced once, then stopped. I'm going to talk to Rowe again, and Kendall, and I'm going to do it now. You two stay here. He went out. The room fell quiet, except for the ticking clock. Lafferty looked at me pale. I'm going to get in trouble. You're already in trouble, I said. Now you're just earning it. He swallowed. Do you think Wolfe is really being framed? I don't think, I said. I smell, and the smell is strong. He tried to understand that, and failed. Cops do not like metaphors unless they involve clubs. After a few minutes, Cramer came back in. His face was hard. Rowe says he did not sign out anything, he said. He says he was at a holiday function Tuesday morning, and he can prove it. He's mad enough to eat nails. And Kendall, I said. Cramer's jaw tightened. Kendall says Wolfe's, people asked. He says a man called claimed to represent Wolfe and said Wolfe wanted the vial for consultation. Kendall says he got approval from Rowe, which Rowe denies, I said. Right, Cramer snapped. And Kendall says he doesn't have to check phone logs because he remembers the call. I said, convenient memory. Cramer leaned forward, hands on the table. Here's the crack, Archie. I checked the phone logs myself. Lafferty's right. No call from Wolfe's house, not even close. And Kendall's desk line did get a 2-minute call from a public phone Tuesday morning. So Kendall could be telling the truth about a call, I said, just not about who called. Cramer nodded once. Exactly. Lafferty blurted. So somebody pretended to be Wolfe's man. Cramer's eyes narrowed. Yes, somebody who knows Wolfe well enough to make it sound right. Somebody who knows what to ask for and how to ask for it. I said, and somebody who knows where the evidence is stored and how the sign-out works. Cramer's expression turned sour, which means it's either someone inside my house or someone who's been in it. He meant the precinct. I understood him. A man does not like discovering rot in his own walls, I said. The folder being in your back room means the thief had access to your building, or access to someone who did. Either way, it didn't get there by accident. Cramer's eyes flashed. Or he mailed it. Not like that, I said. Not in a plain envelope with my name. That was delivered, dumped on a desk. That's someone who walks through your doors. Cramer stared at the folder. And the poison came from my evidence locker. Borrowed poison, I said. That's a nice way to put it. Cramer slammed a fist lightly on the table. All right, this changes things. It tightens the frame because now we got Wolfe tied to a toxin and the toxin tied to my precinct. But it also cracks it, because the story Kendall told doesn't match the records. That's something I can use. He looked at Lafferty. You did the right thing, but you keep your mouth shut. You talk to no one except me, you hear? Lafferty nodded hard. Yes, sir. Cramer looked at me. And you? I lifted my eyebrows. Me? You keep digging, Cramer said, but you don't interfere with my officers. That's like telling a cat not to be curious. I said. I'll try. He ignored that. I'm going to get Volmer's full report. If that poison came from our vial, we can trace its tag numbers. We can prove it was stolen. We can build a case that somebody set this up. And Wolfe gets out, I said. Cramer's mouth tightened. Parker's working on it, but it's Christmas Eve, and judges are humans who like dinner. Wolfe might spend the night in that cell. I felt anger flare, but I kept it in check. Anger was a luxury. We needed facts. I said, I want to talk to Wolfe. Cramer shook his head. Not now. Now, I said. He needs to know the toxin came from your locker, and his file came through your building. He needs to know Kendall is involved. Cramer hesitated, then he grimaced. 5 minutes, and you don't tell him things that make him explode. That's vague, I said. But I'll do my best. He took us down the corridor again to the holding area. The same drunk was still snoring. The angry man was still staring. The room had the same smell of disinfectant and defeat. Wolfe was sitting on his bench, and to my astonishment, he had a book. Someone had found him a thick hardback, probably stolen from a desk. Wolfe held it as if he had always owned it. He looked up as we approached. Archie, he said, you have returned with your customary speed. That suggests either progress or calamity. Both, I said. The Jessamine file is back. His eyes sharpened. Explain. I told him quickly, keeping it crisp. I told him Lafferty had found the folder in the precinct. I told him the Jessamine had come from the police evidence locker. I told him a sign out had been forged or faked, and Kendall had claimed Wolfe requested it indirectly. I told him the phone logs did not support Kendall's claim. Wolfe listened without interruption. When I finished, he closed his book slowly. So, he said, the poison was borrowed from police custody. That is bold, and it confirms my suspicion that the frame is not the work of an amateur. Cramer, standing behind me, grunted. You got suspicions? You got anything useful? Wolfe's eyes shifted to him. Inspector, your detective Kendall is either complicit or foolish. I do not know which is worse for you. Cramer's face reddened. Watch it. Wolfe's tone remained level. You should be watching, not I. The pertinent detail is that the poison was removed from evidence, and a false pretext was used. That pretext involved me. Therefore, the person who arranged it has intimate knowledge of my history and my relationship with your department. I nodded. And we have the calendar from Brand's desk. 2 entries for NW. Someone came after you, pretending to be you. Wolfe's eyes narrowed. That is also significant. Cramer said, We're getting it. Wolfe did not look at him. He looked at me. Archie, the person who forged my involvement in the evidence locker likely forged other things. The note in Ashby's pocket, for example. Wolfe, I said, we found your folder missing from the house, and now we know it went through the precinct. That suggests the thief can move between your world and Cramer's. Wolfe's eyes were steady. Yes. That reduces the field, Cramer snorted. You got a field, Wolfe. Share it. Wolfe's voice was precise. I will share it when I am in my office and you are seated where I can see you properly. For the moment, I will offer a practical suggestion. Determine who had access to the evidence locker sign-out forms. Determine who had access to the back room where my folder appeared. And determine why Detective Kendall was eager to accept a request allegedly from my representative. Cramer's mouth tightened. We're doing that. Wolfe's gaze returned to me. Archie, find Horseman. I felt the words tighten my chest. His name was on Brand's calendar, in the margin with a question mark. Wolfe's expression did not change, but his eyes hardened. Then it is possible Horseman was approached. Perhaps as a conduit, he has access to my house. He is also, regrettably, impressionable, I said. Or scared. Yes, Wolfe agreed. Or scared. Cramer looked at me sharply. Horseman, your plant guy, he's missing. Yes, I said. And if he is being used, he might be dead next. Cramer swore softly, I'll put out a pickup. Wolfe's eyes lifted. Do so with haste and restraint. If you broadcast his name, you may endanger him further. Cramer glared. Cramer turned away with a muttered curse. I leaned closer to Wolfe. Anything else? Wolfe's voice dropped slightly. Yes, the person who chose Jessamine chose it not merely because it kills. He chose it because it points, that implies vanity or purpose. He wants me not just accused, but humiliated. Who would want that? I asked. Wolfe's eyes held mine. Many, but only a few would be able. I left him there, reading in a cage, and it made my jaw clench. But I also felt something else, thin but real. The frame was still tight. It was tightening, in fact, by dragging in the police evidence locker. That could bury us if we were careless, but it had cracked too, a forged sign, out a false story, a phone log that refused to cooperate. Those cracks were the kind that let light in, and once light gets in, a careful liar starts to sweat. Back in the corridor, Cramer grabbed my arm. "Archie," he said low, "I don't like you sniffing around my precinct. I don't like you cuffing my employer." I said, "We're even." His eyes burned. "Listen, Kendall is going to be furious if this turns on him. Rowe is already furious. Somebody inside my house may be dirty. That means somebody might try to shut you up too. You understand?" I stared at him. "I've been threatened by better men than your detectives." "Good," Cramer growled. "Then you'll be careful anyway." He let go. I walked out into the cold again, the city still dressed for Christmas, and I felt the case shifting under my feet. The enemy had reached into Wolfe's past, into his files, and into the police evidence locker, and had done it with the kind of confidence that comes only from familiarity. Summoner knew Wolfe's methods intimately, Summoner close enough to copy him. And now, because a young property clerk had decided to be honest on the wrong night, the neat frame that had tightened around Wolfe had shown its first real flaw. He headed for a cab, and my next thought was not about the poison or the permits. It was about Theodore Horseman. Because if his name was in Brand's calendar and Wolfe's file had been carried through the precinct like contraband, then Theodore was either the weakest link in the chain or the next target, and on Christmas Eve, in a city full of locked doors and bright lights, a frightened man can disappear very easily. Chapter 5. Cramer doubts Christmas. When I got back to the brownstone after midnight, the city had quieted down the way a tired drunk quiets down. It was still noisy if you listened for it, but the noise had lost its confidence. The holiday lights on the avenue blinked like they were doing it out of habit. A gust of wind chased a scrap of wrapping paper along the curb, as if the season had decided to shed its skin. Inside, warmth hit me like a reprimand. Fritz had kept the house the way Wolfe liked it, which meant it was clean, ordered, and stubbornly civilized. The dining room table was still set. The roast smell had softened into something faint and melancholy. On the sideboard, Fritz had arranged the plates as if expecting Wolfe to walk in at any moment, insult everyone, and sit down. That made me angry all over again, because I knew Wolfe was still sitting upright on a bench in a holding cell, reading a book that smelled like somebody's desk drawer. Fritz met me in the hall, silent, his face tight with the kind of discipline he used when life was being rude. "Well," I said, "we have our Jessamine file back, thanks to an honest property clerk and an unlucky envelope." Fritz's eyes narrowed. "And Mr. Wolfe?" "In a cell," I said. "In possession of a book." He asked for silence. "The precinct did not provide it, but he will pretend it did." Fritz's lips compressed. "Then the dinner was wasted." "It was not wasted," I told him. "It was honored. It was honored. It sat ready. That is what you do. You keep the world civilized even when the world is acting like a thug." That got me a look that was almost approval. I went into the office, shut the door, and stood there a moment staring at Wolfe's chair. It had a way of making you feel the absence of its owner like a physical weight. I sat at my desk, opened the Jessamine folder, and flipped through it carefully, as if it might bruise. Wolfe's notes were as neat as ever. Dates, names, observations, one page on the properties of Jessamine, precise, clinical, the handwriting steady as a metronome. Another page listing the chain of custody for the evidence in that old case, including the precinct, the name of the detective who had handled it then, and the clerk who had stored it. Wolfe did not write anything without a reason, even when he was writing what he already knew, and that list of names sat there like a set of hooks. I read the old detective's name twice. Detective Lionel Kendall. So he had been around even then. I had known he had been in homicide a long time, but seeing his name in Wolfe's old notes made me uneasy. It was like discovering a man you disliked had been in your house before you bought it. There was a knock on the door. I looked up, ready to bark, but it was Fritz. His face was composed, which meant something else was not. "Inspector Cramer is here," he said. I blinked. "Now." Fritz nodded. "He insists. He is not polite." "That's the holiday spirit," I said, and stood up. Cramer came in behind Fritz without waiting to be invited, stamping snow off his shoes as if he were trying to grind the season into the rug. His coat was open, his tie was loose, and his face looked as if it had been carved out of tiredness. Stebbins was with him, hovering a step behind, eyes cautious. Cramer glanced around the office, and his gaze landed on the open folder on my desk. "That's it," he said. I nodded. "The Jessamine file. It went for a ride." Cramer came to the desk, leaned over, and looked at the tab label, his face tightening. "So Horseman took it." "I did not say that," I said. "I said it was missing, and then it appeared in your precinct. That suggests movement, not proof," Cramer grunted. "Everything suggests movement. I've been moving since dusk." He dropped into the red leather chair opposite my desk, the one Wolfe reserved for clients who had money or trouble. Cramer had both tonight, and not enough of either. "All right," he said. "Tell me everything you got, slow and clean." I told him. I went through the doorman's statements. The thin man in the cap, the second big man at 4, and Brand's calendar with 2 entries for NW. I told him about the margin note, Horstman, with a question mark, because hiding it would have been foolish. Cramer's jaw tightened as he listened. He did not interrupt until I finished, and when I was done he sat back and stared at the ceiling as if it might offer a confession. "You're saying Wolfe was there at 2, and somebody else was there at 4, he said. "Same silhouette, different man. That's what Brand's calendar suggests," I said. "And it matches the doorman's memory." Cramer's eyes shifted to Stebbins. "You heard this?" Stebbins nodded. "Yes, sir." Cramer swore softly. "I should have had that calendar the minute we found him." "You were busy cuffing Wolfe," I said. Cramer ignored that. He had a talent for ignoring things he deserved. "All right," he said. "Now here is what I have." Volmer called me again. "He's sure about the toxin. It's gelsamine. Same signature as that old case, trace compounds and all. And the amount in Brand's coffee was measured. Somebody did not guess. Somebody knew." I nodded. "Borrowed poison. Borrowed from my locker," Cramer growled. "Stolen, really, which means I got internal affairs sniffing already. Rowe is climbing my spine. The district attorney is on my back, and Kendall is walking around like he's doing me a favor." Stebbins shifted. "Sir, Kendall is in the building." Cramer's eyes narrowed. "I know." He looked back at me. "Now, about timing, you said Wolfe left Brand's place around 2:30. Brand was found dead around 6, but Volmer says he probably died around 4:30 or 5. Rigor was starting, stomach contents, all that." I felt a pulse of relief. So Brand was poisoned after Wolfe left the area. Cramer nodded, once, grudging. "Looks that way." "Then why is Wolfe still in a cell?" I demanded. "Because," Cramer snapped, "I can't release him and pretend it's over. Not with Ashby dead too. Ashby's time of death is still unclear, but the stabbing was some time after 5, and I got that damned note in his pocket. I got a complaint filed. I got a witness who said he saw Wolfe near Ashby's office." "Your witness saw a big man," I said. "And your witness is now a problem." Cramer's eyes narrowed. "What do you mean?" "I mean," I said, "if somebody showed up at Brand's place pretending to be Wolfe, somebody could show up at Ashby's office pretending to be Wolfe. All they need is size and a coat. Wolfe is famous. People remember the shape more than the face." Cramer's mouth tightened. "That's what you say. That's what Wolfe says. I need more than what you say." Stebbins cleared his throat. "Sir, about that witness." Cramer turned his head slowly. "What about him?" Stebbins looked uncomfortable. He called back. "The woman across the street from Ashby's office, the one who said she saw Mr. Wolfe go in." Cramer's eyes sharpened. "She called back to say what?" Stebbins swallowed. "She said she wasn't sure anymore." The room went quiet. I leaned forward. Why not? Stebbins glanced at Cramer, as if asking permission to breathe, then said, because she says she never saw his face. She saw a large man in a dark coat. She assumed it was Wolfe because she heard the name after the police asked questions. Cramer's hand clenched on the arm of the chair, she assumed. Stebbins nodded. Yes, sir, she said. She felt pressured. She said she didn't want trouble. Cramer closed his eyes for a second, and when he opened them, the tiredness had been replaced by something colder. That's a retraction, I said. It's a retreat, Cramer growled. And it helps. But it also means somebody is stirring fear. Either she's scared of being wrong, or she's scared of someone, I said. Or someone visited her. Cramer's eyes narrowed. Did she say someone visited her? Stebbins shook his head quickly. No, sir. Cramer looked at me. But you think so? I think a lot, I said. You are the one with badges. You can check. Cramer exhaled. Hard. I will. He stood up, paced to the window, and looked out at the street. The holiday lights were still blinking. A couple walked by, close together, laughing, and for a moment it looked like the world was normal. Then Cramer turned back, and the normal world disappeared again. I got pressure, he said, from the department, from the district attorney, from my own men. 2 dead bodies on Christmas Eve, and my suspect is the most famous private detective in New York. That makes headlines, that makes careers, that makes trouble, I said. And you are doubting Christmas. Cramer gave me a look that was almost bitter humor. Christmas can go jump in the river. He came back to the desk and planted both hands on it. All right, he said. Here's what I'm doing. I'm delaying charges. I blinked. You can do that. I can do it for a little while, he said. I can hold Wolfe on the warrant for Ashby and keep it as an investigation, not a formal charge. The district attorney wants to slap charges on him tonight. I told him no. Stebbins's eyes widened. Cramer's mouth tightened. Don't look like that, Pearlie. I know what I'm doing. Stebbins swallowed. Yes, sir. Cramer looked at me. You know what that costs me. It costs you sleep, I said. It costs me my career if I'm wrong, he snapped. If the district attorney thinks I'm protecting Wolfe, he can make my life hell. If Internal Affairs thinks my precinct is leaking evidence, they can make my life hell. If Kendall thinks I'm blocking him, he will make my life hell just for sport. And you're still doing it, I said. Cramer's jaw clenched. Because I'm tired of being played, because the timing doesn't fit, because the witness wobbled, because that toxin came out of my locker under a story that doesn't match the phone logs, because somebody is building a case and I'm not stupid enough to admire the carpentry. That was the closest Cramer came to praise, and it warmed me about as much as a match in a blizzard. I said, then let Wolfe out. Cramer shook his head. Not yet. I slammed my palm lightly on the desk. Cramer. His eyes hardened. Archie, listen, if I let him out and he walks home and the district attorney files charges anyway, Wolfe is still in trouble, and I'm in trouble too. If I keep him a few more hours while I tighten the case, I can either release him clean or charge him clean. I want clean. I swallowed my anger. What do you need? Cramer's gaze shifted to the open folder. I need to know who in this city knows Wolfe's methods intimately enough to use his old case poison, mimic his handwriting, and set up meetings under his initials. I said, that's a long list, but not that long. Cramer's eyes narrowed. Start shortening it. I nodded slowly. We have one name already. Theodore Horstman. His name was in Brand's calendar, margin, with a question mark. Stebbins spoke up, tentative. Sir, we put out a request to locate Horstman. No hits yet. Cramer grunted. He can be anywhere. And he might be dead, I said. Cramer's mouth tightened, or he might be the one doing it. Possible, I admitted. But the evidence, locker theft, suggests someone comfortable in police channels, or someone with police access. Theodore is comfortable with orchids. Cramer's eyes sharpened, unless someone used him as a courier. That's what I'm thinking, I said. Scare him, pay him, tell him he's doing Wolfe a favor, use him to get the folder, use him to plant it, then ditch him. Cramer stared at the folder again. And Kendall's name is in Wolfe's old case notes. That made Stebbins blink, sir. Cramer ignored him and looked at me. That file mentions Kendall. He was on that old case. I nodded. I saw it too. Cramer's voice grew rougher. He's been itching to stick Wolfe for years. He hates the idea that Wolfe makes him look clumsy. If Kendall got his hands on the poison, he would know how to wave it in front of the district attorney and make it look like proof. But Kendall also claimed Wolfe requested it, I said, which the logs contradict. Cramer's eyes narrowed. Meaning Kendall either lied or he was lied to. That's your crack, I said. Cramer stared at me a second, then said, the second witness retraction is another crack. Second witness, I repeated. Cramer nodded. We had a second person who told an officer he saw Wolfe near Ashby's office. A delivery kid, young. He said he saw a big man with a hat and a fancy coat going into the building. Then he saw the news, heard the name, and said it was Wolfe. And now, I said. Cramer's mouth tightened. Now he's saying he's not sure. His mother came in raising hell. She said the cops scared him. Stebbins looked pained. Sir, we didn't scare him. Cramer shot him a look. The badge scares people, Pearlie. That's what it's for, I said. So the witness statements are softening. The timeline points away from Wolfe. The poison trail points toward a forged request. The frame is tightening, but it is also cracking. Cramer grunted. That's what I said. He looked around the office as if seeing it for the first time. He had been here 100 times, usually with Wolfe sitting in that chair, calm and infuriating, and me leaning on the desk with a grin. Now Wolfe was absent, and the office felt like a body missing a bone. Cramer's face softened, just a fraction. I don't like him, he said, and it came out like a confession. But I don't like this either, I said. Then help me. Cramer nodded once. All right. Here's what you do. You keep digging into Brand's permit denial. Find out who else worked with him. Find out who he talked to. Find out why he wrote Horstman's name on his calendar. And if you can, find out why Ashby was involved. I said, Ashby called Brand at 12:30. That's on the calendar. Cramer's eyes narrowed. And Ashby is dead. Yes, I said. Which means Ashby either knew too much or was part of it and got cut loose. Cramer grimaced. Either way, it points at a third person. I nodded. The one who benefits, Cramer said. And Archie. What? I said. He leaned closer, lowering his voice. Do not underestimate the pressure inside the department. If internal affairs gets traction, they will tear apart every officer who touched that evidence locker. That makes men nervous. Nervous men do dumb things. If Kendall is dirty, he might do something desperate. If Kendall is clean, he might still do something stupid to protect himself. Stebbins swallowed. Cramer straightened. So you keep your head, and you do not go wandering alone into alleys looking for a missing plant man, I said. If I find him, I'll wave a lantern. Cramer gave me a look that was almost a smile, and then not. All right, he said. I have to go back. The district attorney is waiting, and Rowe is waiting, and Kendall is waiting. If I leave them waiting too long, they will start biting. He moved toward the door, then stopped and turned back. Archie, he said. Yes, he hesitated, and for a second I saw something that was not just fatigue. It was doubt. Cramer did not doubt often. He usually bulldozed. If this goes wrong, he said quietly, they'll say I protected Wolfe. They'll say I let a killer walk. And if it goes right, I said, they'll say you got lucky. Cramer's mouth tightened. Yeah, he headed out, Stebbins following. At the doorway, Stebbins paused and looked back at me, and his face had that young, apologetic look again. I'm sorry, he said. For what? I asked. For Christmas, he said, and then he hurried after Cramer. When they were gone, the house felt too quiet. Fritz had retreated to the kitchen, maintaining order through resentment. The orchids upstairs would still be warm and humid, waiting for Theodore, who was missing. Wolfe was still in a cell, reading, waiting impatiently for truth, the way he waited impatiently for dinner. I sat at my desk and stared at Brand's calendar notes I had copied down. 3:40 L, 5:10 drop the margin, Horstman. The second, Nadalju, a permit officer, a shipping man. A toxin borrowed from evidence, a plant man missing, a homicide detective with a grudge, too many moving parts for coincidence and too much neatness for honesty. Midnight had passed. Christmas had arrived on the clock, but not in the house. I picked up the phone and called the Queen's number the permit clerk had given me for Marion Klein. It rang, and I almost gave up. But then a woman answered, her voice sharp with sleep. "What?" she snapped. "Miss Klein," I said. "This is Archie Goodwin. I work for Nero Wolfe." There was a pause. Then her voice changed, hardening. "Nero Wolfe is in jail." "He is," I said. "That is why I'm calling." Another pause. Longer. Then she said, "How did you get this number?" "From your office," I said. "Miss Klein, Leo Brand is dead, and someone is trying to make it look like Wolfe killed him. I need 5 minutes of your time." She made a sound like a laugh without humor. 5 minutes, on Christmas morning. "Exactly," I said. "It will be memorable." She was silent a beat, then said, "All right, talk," I said. "Brand denied Wolfe a permit weeks ago. Did Brand ever tell you why?" She hesitated. He said, "Wolfe wouldn't pay." My chest tightened. "Pay? What?" She exhaled sharply. "He didn't say it like that. He said Wolfe wouldn't cooperate. He said Wolfe thought he was above the rules." "That's Wolfe," I said. "But Brand hinted at a private arrangement, didn't he?" Silence. "Miss Klein," I said softly. "Brand's calendar has your name on it at 11 yesterday. What did you talk about?" Her voice went colder. "I told him to stop playing games, that's what." Brand was taking money. I sat up. "Bribes?" "Yes," she said. And now her tone was furious. The kind of fury you get when someone has dragged your office through mud. He was skimming, taking payments to speed permits or deny them until the right person came along. I told him he was going to get caught. "Did he say who was paying him?" I asked. "No," she snapped. "He was careful. He was not stupid." "He might have been," I said. He wrote a name in his calendar margin. Theodore Horstman. "Does that mean anything to you?" There was a pause so long I thought she had hung up. Then she said quietly, "I know that name." My skin tightened. "From where?" "From a complaint," she said. "Not filed. Drafted. Brand showed it to me like he was proud. A man named Horstman came in claiming to act on behalf of Nero Wolfe." My heart kicked. "When?" "2 weeks ago," she said. "Horstman said Wolfe needed the permit fast. Brand told him no. Horstman looked scared. Brand laughed. I gripped the receiver. Did Horstman offer money?" Klein hesitated. "He didn't say money. He said he had something that could help Brand. Something Brand wanted. Brand told him to come back later." My throat went dry. "Something Brand wanted, like what?" "I don't know," she said. "Brand wouldn't tell me. He just smiled." I stared at Wolfe's empty chair. "Miss Klein," I said, "did Brand ever mention Leonard Ashby?" "Yes," she said, and her voice tightened. "Ashby was one of Brand's contacts. Not official, they met for drinks sometimes." I said, "Brand was taking bribes. Ashby was connected. Horstman came in scared, and then Brand wrote Horstman's name down." Klein's voice went small. "What does that mean?" "It means," I said, "you need to remember everything Brand told you because someone is killing people and borrowing poison to frame my boss." She exhaled. "What do you want from me?" "I want you," I said, "to meet me in the morning, early, and I want any notes you kept on Brand's activities." She hesitated. "I can't. The police will be all over this." "They already are," I said, "and they are looking at Wolfe. If you want them to look somewhere else, you talk to me, and I promise you my boss will make it worth your discomfort." She let out a short breath. "All right. Where?" I gave her a place. A coffee shop near her office that would be open because the city never fully sleeps. Not even on Christmas. When I hung up, my head was buzzing. Horstman had gone to Brand's office 2 weeks ago. Then Brand got pressured to file a complaint about Wolfe. Ashby was involved. A poison tied to Wolfe's past was stolen from police custody. Wolfe's file was stolen and then appeared in a precinct back room. Brand's calendar had 2 meetings marked NW, one of them likely an imposter. And now I knew Brand had laughed at Horstman. That was not a laugh. A man gets to keep. I sat back and stared at the desk blotter until the pattern blurred. Truth was waiting impatiently, just the way Wolfe waited for his beer, and I had the sense that it was not going to wait much longer. If the people behind this were tightening the frame, they might decide to cut loose any dangling threads. Horstman was a dangling thread. Marion Klein might be one too. And I was walking around with the name of a bribe, taking permit officer, a dead shipping man, and a homicide detective with his fingers near an evidence locker. My phone rang. He snatched it up. Goodwin. It was Stebbins, and his voice was strained. Archie, Inspector Cramer, told me to call you if anything moved. Something moved, I said. Yes, he said. Kendall just requested to interview Wolfe again, alone. My stomach dropped. Stebbins, I said slowly. Do not let Kendall anywhere near Wolfe alone. Do you understand? Stebbins swallowed audibly. I tried. Cramer is arguing with the district attorney. Kendall is pushing. They're saying procedure. Procedure, I said, feeling heat rise, is what you use to hide a knife. Listen to me. Go to that cell. Stand in front of it if you have to. If Kendall talks to Wolfe alone, we may lose this case before breakfast. Stebbins's voice tightened. I'm going. The line went dead. I sat there for a second, staring at the receiver. Then I grabbed my coat. Christmas morning had arrived, and somebody inside the precinct wanted Wolfe in private. That was not a carol. That was a warning. Chapter 6. Wolfe from the inside when I got to the precinct. Christmas had settled into its ugliest version of itself, the kind where a man's goodwill is used as wrapping paper for something sharp. The lobby was quieter than it had been earlier, but not calmer. A police station does not get calm. It only changes tempo. The desk sergeant looked up as I came in, recognized me, and did the sensible thing, which was to pretend I was not there. I saw Stebbins in the corridor, planted like a nervous lamp post in front of the holding area door. His cap was off, his hair was damp, and his eyes were wide with the kind of determination that comes from fear. He spotted me and exhaled hard. Archie. Where is Kendall? I asked. Stebbins jerked his head toward the door. Inside he's been pushing. He says he has authority. I told him no, not alone. And he took that well, I said. Stebbins's mouth tightened. He said he would make a report that I obstructed an investigation. Good, I said. Tell him to spell your name right. We went in. Kendall was standing at the bars of Wolfe's cell, close enough to breathe on them. He was a solid man with a thick neck, and the kind of face that does not do expressions well. His eyes were sharp, but there was a warmth missing behind them. Some men have it, some men do not. Kendall did not. He turned as we entered, and his mouth tightened. Goodwin, he said. You again. That's the season, I said. You keep giving. I keep showing up. Wolfe was sitting on the bench, upright, book on his lap, as if he were presiding over a committee meeting, instead of being held like a purse snatcher. His eyes lifted to Kendall, then to me, and I saw at once he had been listening hard. Wolfe listened the way other men breathed, automatically and constantly, even when he looked asleep. Kendall said, I'm interviewing Wolfe. You're visiting, I said. Interviewing requires permission and brains. Kendall's eyes flicked to Stebbins. Sergeant, you can wait outside. Stebbins held his ground. Inspector Cramer said no one talks to Mr. Wolfe alone. Kendall's jaw flexed. Cramer isn't here. That's why I'm here, I said. Kendall's eyes went flat. You have no standing. I have lungs, I told him, and I use them. Wolfe spoke, calm and precise. Detective Kendall, Your presence is an annoyance. Your insistence on solitude suggests either impropriety or stupidity. I do not care which. Leave. Kendall leaned toward the bars. Wolfe, 2 people are dead. Your name is all over it. Then you should investigate the dead, Wolfe said. I am alive and inconvenient. Kendall straightened and looked at me. Cramer is stalling. The district attorney wants charges. I'm helping. You are helping yourself, I said. And that is always dangerous. Kendall's eyes narrowed. You accusing me of something. I am accusing you of having poor taste, I said. On Christmas morning, you try to squeeze a man in a cell without counsel present. That's not police work. That's fishing. Kendall's face darkened. Watch your mouth. I watch it often, I said. Right now, I'm watching you. Kendall stood there a moment, measuring. Then he made a small motion with his hand, a gesture of contempt, and stepped back. Fine, he said. Have your little conference, but Wolfe's not walking out of here. He turned and left without looking at Stebbins. When the door shut behind him, Stebbins exhaled again, as if he had been holding his breath since midnight. Wolfe's gaze went to Stebbins. Sergeant, you have done a correct thing. Stebbins blinked. Praise from Wolfe was a rare bird, and usually arrived without warning. Thank you, sir. You may now leave, Wolfe said. Stebbins hesitated, glanced at me. I nodded. He stepped out and pulled the door closed. I moved to the bars. Wolfe, Kendall is pushing too hard. Wolfe's eyes were heavy, lidded. Yes, that mean you think he's guilty, I said. It means he is either guilty or frightened, Wolfe replied. In either case, he is useful. That's comforting, I said. Cramer is delaying charges, but the pressure is rising. Internal Affairs is sniffing, because the poison came from a police evidence locker. Rowe is furious. Kendall is prowling. Wolfe, we need something solid. Wolfe's chin lifted slightly. We already have something solid. We have the truth. The difficulty is persuading the police to recognize it. That's what I'm asking for, I said. Give me the truth in a shape I can carry. Wolfe closed his book and set it aside carefully. Then he looked at me through the bars, and for the first time since his arrest, I saw impatience sharpen into focus. Wolfe could endure discomfort, but he hated waiting when he could be thinking in comfort instead. Archie, he said, you have spoken to Mr. Brand's doorman. You have seen the calendar. Yes. Therefore, Wolfe said, you know I met Mr. Brand at approximately 2 o'clock, and that another man recorded as NW came at 4. Yes, Mr. Brand died after 4, Wolfe said. Not before. That's what Cramer says the medical examiner thinks, I said. Wolfe nodded once. Then Mr. Brand was poisoned after I departed. That fact alone should have removed me from the category of suspect. Unfortunately, Inspector Cramer is hampered by procedure and ego. That's polite, I said. Wolfe's eyes narrowed slightly. Now, I will reconstruct the meeting. I have done it repeatedly in this cell as an antidote to the odor. He paused long enough for me to imagine the odor had taken offense. Mr. Brand, Wolfe continued, was anxious. Not merely irritated or greedy, but anxious in a manner that suggested impending exposure. He spoke of pressure to file a complaint against me. He also spoke of Mr. Ashby, who urged him to do so. I know, I said. Brand's calendar shows Ashby called him at 12:30. Wolfe inclined his head. Yes, Mr. Brand also mentioned an audit. I stopped. An audit. Wolfe's gaze held mine. He said, in substance, that an audit had been threatened. He did not use the term casually. It was a specter, he said. If they audit my permits, I am finished. My stomach tightened. Who threatened him? He did not name the person, Wolfe said. He implied it was someone with knowledge of his activities and influence over the relevant offices. He said he had been told the audit would begin after Christmas. After Christmas, I repeated. Yes, Wolfe said. That detail matters. It provided him a short window in which to act, to secure a scapegoat, or to flee. I leaned in. Wolfe. Did he say why he thought the audit would happen? Wolfe's eyes narrowed, recalling. He said someone had filed an anonymous tip. Not about him directly, but about irregularities in a set of permits. He said the permits involved a contractor with extensive projects. He said, if they look at those jobs, they will look at me. I felt my pulse pick up. A contractor name. Wolfe shook his head. He did not provide one. He did not need to. He believed I would understand the implication. Which was, I said, that he'd been taking money. Wolfe's expression remained calm. Yes, Mr. Brand hinted at improper conduct regarding my own permit. He suggested it could be resolved. I declined. He then denied the permit. That denial now serves as an attractive motive for the unimaginative, I said. And for the man framing you. Wolfe's eyes hardened. Precisely, he needed a motive that would look clean to the newspapers. He needed a reason for a permit officer to be in conflict with me. He selected the permit denial. He did not invent it. He exploited it. I swallowed. Brand planned to confess after Christmas. Wolfe's eyelids lowered. That is an inference, but a strong one. Brand spoke as a man preparing for a decision. His anxiety had a direction. He said, I cannot keep doing it. He said, I am going to tell them. He did not say who them were, but it suggested investigators, auditors, or a superior. I stared at him. If Brand was going to confess, the contractor had a problem. Wolfe nodded. A lethal problem, and the contractor needed a villain, I said. Yes, Wolfe said. A convenient villain, one with public visibility, one with a plausible grievance, one who can be described by size and silhouette. I am, regrettably, perfect. I grimaced. Almost. Wolfe's mouth tightened. Almost, because the man underestimated two things. First, the banal limitations of time. Second, your persistence. That's also polite, I said. Wolfe's gaze sharpened. Now, listen. Brand's mention of an audit is your thread. Find the audit. Find the contractor. Find who had reason to fear exposure. Then you will find who needed my disgrace as a shield. I nodded slowly. All right, I will. But I also need to know one more thing. Did Brand say anything about horsemen? Wolfe's eyes narrowed. Number not by name. He did, however, mention a visit from a nervous man some days earlier. He said the man spoke for me, but Brand doubted it. He said the man offered him something useful. My skin tightened. That matches Marion Clean's story? Wolfe's chin lifted. Then Horseman has been used as a conduit. He may have been frightened, or bribed, or both. Either way, he is in danger, I said. Cramer put out a pickup, but quietly Kendall may already know. Wolfe's eyes went hard. Then you will find Horseman before Kendall does. I took a breath. Wolfe, about the evidence locker. Somebody requested that Gelsomine vial with a story about you. That suggests the contractor has reach into the precinct. Wolfe considered. Or employs someone who does. That landed. Contractors in New York do not just hire men with hammers. They hire men with connections, I said. All right, I'm going after the audit. Wolfe's gaze held mine, Good and Archie. Yes. His voice lowered slightly, and there was steel in it. When you locate the contractor, you will be careful. A man who steals poison from police custody is not restrained. Wolfe, I said, I am always careful when it is expensive. He blinked slowly. Leave. I left him in the cell, not defeated, not even truly confined, because his mind was moving freely, reconstructing the crime from memory, with the calm of a man arranging orchids. Wolfe could not see the scene now, but he did not need to. He had already stored it, and now he was turning it in his head until the angles matched. Outside, Stebbins was waiting, anxious. Anything, he asked. Yes, I said. Wolfe remembers Brand mentioned a threatened audit. We find the audit, we find the villain. Stebbins blinked. An audit. City paper, I said. The deadliest poison in New York. I went out into the cold again. The city had that early morning quiet, the kind that makes even dirty streets look clean for 5 minutes. Somewhere, church bells rang somewhere. A drunk argued with a lamppost, New York in holiday dress pretending. I headed to the phone in the precinct lobby and called Marion Clean again. She answered on the third ring, and she sounded less sleepy and more angry. "Goodwin," she said, "it is still Christmas." "Then you should be grateful I'm giving you a purpose," I said. "Miss Clean, I need to know about an audit." Brand mentioned one, a threatened audit of permits tied to a contractor. There was a pause, and when she spoke her voice was tighter. "Yes, you know about it," I said. "Yes," she said, "we got a notice, not official yet, but it was coming. A review of expedited permits and variances." Brand was nervous. "Who pushed it?" I asked. She exhaled sharply. "Someone in the comptroller's office, or internal, or both." Word came down. It was going to start the week after Christmas. Wolfe's memory matched. That made my pulse quicken. "Which contractor?" I asked. She hesitated. "Miss Klein," I said. "If you hesitate, Wolfe stays in a cell and someone else gets killed." Her voice went colder. "The biggest one in our pile, Malcolm Harrogate contracting." "Harrogate," I repeated. "Yes," she said. "They have half a dozen jobs going. Big renovations, conversions, commercial, residential. Brand handled a lot of their permits." "He was their man, bribed regularly," I said. "Yes," she admitted. "Brand was not subtle. He took cash, he took gifts, he called it holiday appreciation. He was taking from Harrogate for a long time." My throat tightened. "And if the audit hit Harrogate's permits, the trail leads to Brand." "Yes," she said, "and Brand was scared. He told me yesterday before he died that he was going to stop. He said after Christmas he would go in and make a clean statement to protect himself." "A confession," I said. "Call it what you want," she snapped. "He said he was tired of being owned." "Owned?" That word had teeth. "Miss Klein," I said, "why would Harrogate need Wolfe to be the villain?" She was silent for a beat, then spoke carefully. "Because Wolfe is famous, because everyone knows him. Because if Brand died and Wolfe got blamed, nobody would look at permits. They would look at Wolfe." "Convenient," I said. "Yes," she said. "Convenient." I closed my eyes a second. The outline was forming. Harrogate bribes Brand. Audit threatens to expose them. Brand plans to confess after Christmas. Harrogate needs Brand quiet and needs a distraction. Wolfe is perfect because of the permit denial, because of his fame, because people can identify him by silhouette and newspaper lore. Almost perfect because the framing had cracks. "Do you know anyone at Harrogate?" I asked. Klein hesitated. "I know their liaison, a man named Curtis Vale." "Vale," I repeated, filing it away. "He comes in," she said. "Smiles, pays, always polite. Brand liked him." "What about Leonard Ashby?" I asked. "The shipping office man, was he tied to Harrogate?" She exhaled. "Ashby handled deliveries for some of their sites, materials, equipment. He was part of their supply chain. Not official, but yes." That fit too neatly. "And Theodore Horseman," I said. "The Orchid Man, did Harrogate ever have contact with him?" Bakeline hesitated longer. Then she said, "There was a call. Weeks ago. Someone asked for Wolfe's assistant. Not you, someone else. They asked about plants, about orchids. It struck me as strange at the time. I asked Brand. He said it was nothing." I felt a chill. Someone was sniffing around Wolfe's house. "Yes," she said. Brand laughed. "Brand laughed at the wrong time," I said. Caitlin's voice dropped. "Goodwin, if you are going after Harrogate, be careful. Those men are not like Brand. They are not clerks." "I noticed," I said. "Thank you." I hung up and stood for a moment, phone in hand, letting the pieces click. Harrogate contracting. Curtis Vale, bribes, audit after Christmas. Brand ready to confess. Harrogate needing a villain and a distraction. Wolfe, perfect, almost. Now I needed proof that would stand up in Wolfe's office under his steady eyes, with Cramer present and squirming. proof that would also survive Kendall's appetite and the district attorney's impatience. I did not have time to go home, change clothes, or pretend I was enjoying the holiday. I had time for one thing, to put my hands on Harrogate's paper trail before somebody shredded it. I called Sol Panzer from the sidewalk outside the precinct. Because when you need information fast, you call a man who collects it for a living. Sol answered with the voice of a man who had been awake too long. Goodwin. Sol, I said, how do you feel about Christmas work? I feel expensive, he said. Good, I told him. I need everything on Harrogate contracting and a liaison named Curtis Vale. Permits, bribes, enemies, connections inside the police department. Anything that smells like access to an evidence locker. There was a pause. That's specific. It's also urgent, I said. Wolfe is in a cell. Sol's tone sharpened. All right, I'll move. I need something today, I said. I heard you, he replied, and hung up. I headed for a cab again, because walking was for men with time and peace, and I had neither. As the cab pulled away, I looked back at the precinct building, imagining Wolfe inside, calm, impatient, reconstructing a murder from memory while the city sang carols. The contractor had bribed Brand regularly. Brand planned to confess after Christmas. The contractor needed a convenient villain. Wolfe was perfect almost, because now I had a name, an audit, and a link strong enough to tug the whole frame until it snapped. Chapter 7. The real arrest by 3 in the morning. Christmas had run out of excuses. The city was still wearing its lights, but they looked tired now, like a man who has kept smiling too long. The streets were quieter, the cabs scarcer, and the wind off the Hudson had turned mean. It was the hour when decent people were asleep and indecent people were busy, which made it the natural hour for the truth to begin showing itself. I was in Cramer's office at the precinct, which was not really his office in the way Wolfe's was. Wolfe's Cramer had a desk, a chair, a coat hook, and a sense that the room might be taken away from him any minute. He leaned on the desk now, sleeves rolled up, staring at a stack of paper as if it had insulted his mother. Stebbins was in the corner, holding a cup of coffee that had been reheated so many times. It had become a moral problem. I was on the edge of a chair, coat still on, because taking it off felt too much like settling in. Cramer jabbed a thick finger at a report. Vollmer says the gelsamine in Brand's coffee matches the evidence vial. Same chemical impurities, same concentration. That means whoever poisoned Brand had our vial in hand. I nodded. Borrowed poison, returned in a body. Cramer's mouth twisted. And we can prove it was signed out Tuesday under Rose's name. Forged. Rose got his alibi. Internal Affairs is going to chew bones for that. I don't care what they chew, I said. I care who fed them. Stebbins cleared his throat. Sir, the calendar from Brand's apartment is in evidence. Cramer nodded. I saw it. He looked at me. 2 entries. That helps. It gives me corrected timelines. Wolfe is in and out at 2. Brand is alive until after 4. Vollmer puts the death around 4:30 or 5. So Wolfe couldn't have poisoned him. Should be enough, I said. It should, Cramer agreed, bitter. But should doesn't keep the district attorney off my back. He reached for another sheet. Now, we got Harrogate. We got their liaison, Curtis Vale. We got proof Brand handled their permits. We got a threatened audit coming after Christmas. We got Klein saying Brand planned to confess. I felt a small surge of satisfaction. Klein gave you a statement. Cramer grunted. She gave me enough to start. She's scared. She should be. Those contractors don't pay their bribes with checks. Stebbins shifted. Sir. Sol Panzer called. I leaned forward. And Cramer picked up a handwritten note and read from it. Panzer says Harrogate has a problem with an audit, and their internal email system shows a flurry of messages about containment and distraction. He also says Vale met with Leonard Ashby twice last week. I nodded. Ashby was supply chain. Also, Cramer continued, Panzer dug up a complaint from 2 years ago. A Harrogate foreman got arrested for assault and was released quick. Guess who leaned on the precinct? My mouth tightened. Who? Cramer's eyes narrowed. Lieutenant Rowe. Stebbins blinked. Sir. Cramer held up a hand. Rowe says it was routine. Maybe it was, but it's a link, I said. So Harrogate knows the precinct. They know who to call. They can get access to forms, to lockers, to people. Cramer's face hardened. And Vale has a cousin in the department, a patrolman assigned to the 20th, name of Eddie Vale. I exhaled slowly. That is not subtle. Cramer jabbed at the paper. Number and Eddie Vale was working Tuesday morning. The morning the Gelsomine vial got signed out. He had access to the back room. He could have dropped Wolfe's folder on a desk. Stebbins murmured. Sir, Internal Affairs will want that. Cramer growled. Internal Affairs can wait until I stop this mess from eating my precinct alive. He looked at me. We're going to Harrogate. I stared at him. Now? Now, he said. The contractor thinks the city is asleep. He's wrong. He grabbed his coat and shoved his arms into it with the kind of aggression usually reserved for punching. Stebbins set down his coffee and followed, eyes alert. I came along because I had no intention of sitting in a warm office while Wolfe sat in a cell. We took 2 unmarked cars. Snow had started again, thin and persistent, and it looked like the sky was trying to cover the city's mistakes with white paper. Harrogate Contracting occupied a building that had been converted from something older, and it looked like a place built for money and secrecy. The lobby was closed, but a security guard buzzed us in when Cramer flashed his badge and his face. The guard's eyes widened when he saw the number of men behind Cramer. He did not ask questions. He opened doors. We went up in an elevator that smelled of stale cologne and panic. On the top floor, a receptionist looked up from behind a desk and blinked as if she had expected Santa. It's Christmas, she said weakly. So is jail, Cramer replied. Where's Curtis Vale? The receptionist swallowed. He's not here. Cramer stepped closer. Then who is? She licked her lips. Mr. Harrogate, the owner, better. Cramer's eyes narrowed. Call him. Tell him the police are here. She hesitated. Cramer's hand moved toward his coat pocket, not for a gun, just for the warrant he did not have, but could pretend he did. She picked up the phone. A minute later, a door opened at the end of the corridor, and a man stepped out. He was tall, lean, well dressed, and his face had that polished look you see in men who appear in business journals. He carried himself like someone who assumed the city existed to be shaped by him. His hair was silver at the temples. His eyes were cool and calculating. Harrogate. He looked at Cramer, then at Stebbins, then at me, and his eyebrows lifted slightly, like a man recognizing a nuisance. Inspector, he said. Is there some emergency? There is, Cramer said. 2 people are dead. You're going to talk about it. Harrogate's mouth tightened. This is highly inappropriate. If you have questions, you can call my attorney. You can call him from a chair, Cramer said. Right now you're going to answer mine. Harrogate's eyes hardened. On what authority? Cramer stepped closer. On the authority of the corrected timeline, the poisoned coffee, and a file you thought disappeared. Harrogate's face remained composed, but his eyes flickered. It was brief. It was enough, he said. I don't know what you're talking about. Cramer nodded. You will. He gestured. In that office now. Harrogate hesitated, then turned and walked back through the door. That was not cooperation. That was calculation. He wanted to control the room. We followed. His office was large and tasteful, glass and wood and expensive paper. A Christmas wreath hung on the wall, as if someone had remembered it was supposed to be a season of goodwill and decided to decorate the lie. Cramer did not sit. He stood in front of the desk like a bulldozer with a badge. Stebbins took position near the door. I stayed slightly to the side, where I could watch hands and faces. Harrogate moved behind the desk and sat down. Calm again. Inspector, whatever this is, it can be handled later. Latter, Cramer said, is when your audit starts. You remember that word. Harrogate's eyes narrowed. Audit? Cramer tossed a folder onto the desk. Paper slid slightly, like a deck of cards about to collapse. Harrogate glanced at it and did not touch it. That was a bad sign for him. Men who are innocent grab paper and argue. Men who are guilty treat paper like poison. Cramer said. Leo Brand was your permit man. Harrogate's voice was smooth. We deal with permit officers all the time. You bribed him, Cramer said. Harrogate did not blink. That is an accusation. It's a fact, Cramer said. We have it from his colleague. We have it from his patterns. We have it from your own people. Harrogate's mouth tightened. You have nothing. Cramer leaned forward. Brand was going to confess after Christmas. He told Marion Klein. He was scared of a threatened audit. He was going to talk. Harrogate's eyes flickered again, and this time it lasted a fraction longer. Cramer's voice grew harsher. So you had a problem. Harrogate's fingers tapped once on the desk. Inspector, you are making reckless assumptions. Let's talk about assumptions. You assumed Nero Wolfe was a perfect villain. Harrogate's eyes shifted to me, and his mouth tightened slightly. He knew who I was. Contractors read newspapers too, Cramer continued. You had Brand deny Wolfe a permit. That gives you motive. You had Brand file a complaint. That gives you paper. You had Leonard Ashby involved to push the complaint and to carry a note with Wolfe's name. Then you killed Ashby when he became inconvenient. You poisoned Brand with gelsamine borrowed from our evidence locker because Wolfe once solved a case involving it. That makes the poison point at Wolfe. Harrogate's expression remained controlled. This is absurd. Cramer's voice cut. Corrected timeline says otherwise. Wolfe was at Brand's apartment at 2. Left by 2:30. Brand died after 4:30. Brand's calendar shows a second NW. Meeting at 4. A second big man was seen entering the building at 4. Harrogate's eyes narrowed. Calendar entries can be forged. They can, Cramer agreed, but the doorman saw it, and the poison came from our evidence locker. Harrogate's gaze remained steady. That is your problem, not mine. Cramer slammed another sheet down. It becomes yours when your liaison's cousin works in the precinct. Eddie Vale, he was on duty Tuesday morning when the poison was signed out under a forged signature. He had access to the back room where Wolfe's stolen file appeared. Harrogate's face tightened. Cramer leaned closer. We have phone logs. Someone called Kendall from a public phone Tuesday morning and asked for the gelsamine vial, claiming to represent Wolfe. No call came from Wolfe's house, which means someone impersonated Wolfe's representative. Harrogate's voice was cold. You are trying to frighten me into confessing to something I did not do. Cramer's eyes were flat. Number, I'm giving you the shape of the wall you're about to hit. Stebbins spoke quietly. Sir, the witness near Ashby's office retracted, said she never saw Wolfe's face. Only a big man in a dark coat. Cramer nodded. Your neat witness fell apart. And another witness did too. That's what happens when you build with paper. Harrogate's fingers tightened on the edge of his desk. That was the first sign of strain. Cramer pulled out a final document. He held it up. And here's the part you didn't plan for, he said. Your man Curtis Vale visited Brand's building at 3:40. Harrogate's eyes snapped up. What? Cramer's voice was grim satisfaction. Brand wrote 3:40 in his calendar. We first figured it meant Leonard Ashby, until we saw Ashby listed in plain English on the same page. 12:30 Ashby call. Lil isn't Leonard. It's liaison. Curtis Vale. We pulled camera footage from the bank across the street. The kind that never sleeps because money never does. It caught him entering, hatless, face clear. He's there at 3:40, 10 minutes before that second. End W entry. Harrogate's face shifted, just slightly. It was a man's mask slipping a fraction. Cramer pressed harder. So Vale goes in at 3:40, then a big man goes in at 4, then Brand is dead by 5. That's your sequence. Harrogate's voice went tight. You have no proof that Vale harmed anyone. Cramer nodded. Not yet, but we have your documentation. He tossed a thin packet onto the desk. Those are your permit payments. We got them from your accounting manager. he decided to get honest when he heard about murder. Cramer's voice was iron. Right now, I have 2 dead bodies and a contractor who thinks the city is his toolbox. Harrogate's composure cracked just a hair, his voice sharpened. If my accounting manager gave you proprietary information, he will be sued into the ground. Cramer's mouth twisted. He said he'd rather be sued than buried. That landed. Harrogate stared at the papers as if they had grown teeth. His fingers hovered. Then he picked one up, scanned it, and his face changed. It was not dramatic. It was not a collapse. It was a slow sag, like a beam giving way, Cramer said quietly now. Brand was going to confess. You couldn't allow that. You needed a distraction. You picked Wolfe. Harrogate's mouth opened, then closed. He swallowed. I watched him carefully. His eyes darted, calculating escape routes the way a man calculates bids. Cramer's voice softened slightly, which was dangerous. You can put this on Vale. You can say he acted alone. But that poison came from a police evidence locker, under a forged signature, and your organization has the only clear access line to that locker. You can't wash your hands of it. Harrogate's jaw clenched. You have no idea what you're saying. Cramer leaned closer. I know you arranged witnesses. I know you planted that note. I know you used Wolfe's own file. I know you thought the timeline would hold. Harrogate's eyes flicked up. Wolfe's file. Cramer nodded. Jessamine, it disappeared from his house and showed up in my precinct. That's not magic. Harrogate's shoulders sagged a fraction more, his voice lowered. You can't prove I touched it. Cramer's voice was steady. Number, but I can prove your people did, and if your people did, you either ordered it or you let it happen. Either way, you're responsible. Harrogate stared at the wreath on his wall, and for a moment his eyes looked tired. Then he looked back at Cramer, and something in him shifted, a decision. All right, he said quietly. Stop. Cramer's eyes narrowed. Stop what? Harrogate exhaled. Stop reciting. It's insulting. Cramer's face hardened. Then talk. Brand was going to talk, he said. Yes, he called Vale. He said he wanted out. He said he would go to Klein after Christmas and make a statement. He thought he could save himself and sacrifice us. Cramer's eyes stayed steady. And you couldn't allow that. Harrogate's mouth tightened. We have contracts, investors, projects. An audit would have destroyed us. Not because of a few payments, but because of what they would have uncovered in the permits. Variances, shortcuts. Brand signed things he shouldn't have. If he confessed, everything collapsed. Stebbins shifted, eyes wide. Cramer's voice was low. So you killed him. Harrogate's jaw tightened. Vale did. Cramer nodded. And you arranged Wolfe. Harrogate's eyes flicked away. Then back. Yes, he said. Wolfe was perfect. Brand had already denied him a permit. Brand had already talked about him. Wolfe was famous. Big, easy to describe. A silhouette. He knew about Wolfe's old poison case. He said he had a friend in the department. He said he could get the sample. Cramer's eyes narrowed. Eddie Vale. Harrogate swallowed. Yes. Cramer leaned in, and the evidence you planted the note in Ashby's pocket. Harrogate's voice was tight. Ashby was useful. He handled shipments for our sites. Vale used him to push Brand. Ashby got nervous. After Vale told him Brand was handled, and the precinct started nosing around, he talked about going to the police. Cramer's eyes were hard. So you stabbed him. Harrogate's face tightened. Vale did. Cramer's voice did not change. And you arranged witnesses. Harrogate's shoulders sagged. We didn't arrange them, he said bitterly. We arranged what they saw. A big man in a coat, a hat, a timing. People filled in the name themselves. That's arranging, I said. Harrogate looked at me, eyes tired and cold. You have no idea how easy it is to make people believe what they already believe. Cramer straightened, and for the first time I saw something like relief flicker in him. Not joy. Relief that he was not being played anymore. He reached into his coat. All right, he said. You're coming with us. Harrogate's mouth tightened. I want my lawyer. You'll get him, Cramer said, and you'll get handcuffs. Stebbins moved forward, and the metal came out, dull in the office light. For a moment, I saw the scene from the beginning of the night, on our stoop, Cramer holding handcuffs and reluctance. Now he held certainty, and the handcuffs were for a man who had earned them. Harrogate stood slowly, as if his knees had become older. He held out his hands with stiff dignity, trying to imitate Wolfe's calm and failing. The cuffs clicked. The sound was different this time. It fit. Cramer nodded once, and his voice was official. Curtis Vale, too. We're picking him up now. Stebbins said, Yes, sir. We escorted Harrogate out past the receptionist, who stared as if she had never seen consequences before. The elevator ride down was silent, except for the soft clink of the cuffs when Harrogate shifted his wrists. Outside, the air cut like a blade. Christmas lights blinked over the street. Indifferent, Cramer handed Harrogate to two officers, gave sharp orders, and then turned to me. I'm going back, he said. Wolfe comes out. My chest loosened, just a little. We drove back to the precinct in a blur. Cramer moved fast now, like a man trying to outrun the night he had been stuck in. He went straight to the desk sergeant, barked orders, and headed for the holding area. Wolfe was still on his bench, book open, posture perfect. The drunk had finally been removed. The room was quieter. When Wolfe saw Cramer, his eyes lifted with mild interest, as if watching a waiter approach with the right plate. Cramer stopped in front of the bars and stared at Wolfe a moment. The reluctance was gone. The apology was back. Wolfe, he said, and his voice was rough. You're free. Wolfe blinked once. Naturally. Cramer's mouth twisted. Don't start. Wolfe rose slowly, enormous and composed, and came to the bars. A uniformed man opened the door. Wolfe stepped out as if the cell had been a minor inconvenience, not a humiliation. Cramer cleared his throat. He looked at Wolfe directly. I'm apologizing, he said. Officially, I arrested you because the evidence pointed at you. The evidence was planted. We have a confession. Wolfe's eyes narrowed slightly. From whom? From Harrogate, Cramer said. And we're picking up Curtis Vale. Wolfe's expression did not soften. It is appropriate. Cramer swallowed. Nero, I'm sorry about the handcuffs, about tonight. Wolfe regarded him, and for a moment there was silence. Then Wolfe spoke, calm and precise. Inspector, your apology is noted. Your competence remains under review. Cramer let out a breath that might have been a laugh if the night had been kinder. Fair enough. Wolfe looked at me. Archie. It is nearly dawn. Yes, I said. Christmas justice arrives late. Wolfe's mouth tightened. Justice is rarely punctual. Cramer gestured. We'll drive you home. I will ride in no police vehicle, Wolfe said. Cramer's eyes narrowed. Wolfe, it's 4 in the morning. Then it is 4 in the morning, Wolfe replied. Archie will obtain a taxi. I sighed. Sure, why not? I'll get a taxi and a choir while I'm at it. Cramer started to protest, then gave up. He was too tired to fight Wolfe's pride. Wolfe put on his coat and hat with careful dignity, as if dressing for dinner, and then he walked out of the precinct beside me, enormous and calm, leaving behind the smell of disinfectant and the echo of metal clicking in the right direction. Outside, the sky in the east was beginning to pale. The city was still for once, as if it too were exhausted. We stood on the sidewalk. Snow fell lightly. A distant siren wailed and then faded. Cramer came out behind us and paused. Nero, he said quietly. Wolfe turned his head. Cramer hesitated, then said, Merry Christmas. Wolfe stared at him a moment, then replied, Good morning, Inspector. The cab I hailed pulled up, its lights cutting through the thin snow. Wolfe climbed in first with the slow care of a man reclaiming his world. As I slid in after him, I looked back at Cramer standing on the sidewalk, coat open, face tired, watching us go. The handcuffs had changed owners. Christmas justice had arrived late, But it had arrived. Almost, because I could feel Wolfe's mind already turning, already impatient, already reaching beyond the confession toward the last loose thread. A confession, in Wolfe's view, was not the end. It was merely a piece of evidence. And, when we reached West 35th Street, I knew the real ending would not happen in a contractor's office or a precinct corridor. It would happen where it always happened. In Wolfe's office, with everyone seated, and Wolfe speaking the truth, as if it were the only thing worth saying. Chapter 8. Breakfast restored Christmas morning at the brownstone began the way it should have begun 12 hours earlier, with heat in the radiators, order in the rooms, and Fritz Brenner behaving as if the universe could be disciplined through proper timing and well-cooked food. We arrived just after dawn, Wolfe stepping out of the cab as if he had merely been delayed by traffic. The sky over West 35th had turned pale and clean, and the street was quiet enough that you could hear the snow under your shoes. Fritz opened the door before I had time to ring. He stood in the hall in a fresh jacket and tie, as if he had slept in them. His eyes went straight to Wolfe's face, then flicked to Wolfe's hands, checking for the indignity that had been there. When he saw nothing but Wolfe's own flesh, his shoulders relaxed in a way that was almost invisible. "Mr. Wolfe," he said, and his voice was steady, but there was emotion under it like a low flame. "You are home." Wolfe removed his hat, handed it to Fritz, and nodded once. "I am home, Fritz." Fritz swallowed. "Breakfast is ready." "Of course it is," Wolfe said. I wanted to hug Fritz for that simple phrase, but men of my upbringing do not hug Swiss cooks in formal wear. We settle for appreciation in the form of obedience. Wolfe walked into the office without pausing, as if the room had been waiting for him, and he intended to prove it. He went straight to his chair, sat down, and let his bulk settle as if the leather had been designed specifically for him. For a second he closed his eyes, and I could see him unclenching something inside that had held tight all night. Then he opened his eyes and looked at me. "Archie," he said, "you will file the report." "Yes," I said. "I will put it in a frame and hang it where the police can admire it." Wolfe's mouth tightened slightly. "Do not be childish." "I'll do my best," I said, and that was a promise I could keep only sometimes. Fritz appeared at the office door. "Mr. Wolfe, breakfast." Wolfe rose, not quickly, but with the smooth inevitability of a man returning to a ritual. He moved to the dining room, and I followed because I had not eaten properly since the previous day, and my stomach was beginning to negotiate. The dining room looked as if it had been preserved under glass. The table was set with the same quiet precision. The silver gleamed. The napkins were folded like disciplined soldiers. The roast of the previous night was gone, replaced by something that smelled like ham and salvation. Wolfe sat at the head of the table. Fritz placed a folded newspaper to one side, a small bowl of fruit, and a pot of coffee. Wolfe did not touch the paper. He touched the coffee first, because coffee is the anchor that keeps a morning from drifting into chaos. Fritz served ham, not a thick slab slapped on a plate, not a casual portion. Fritz served ham precisely on schedule, and precisely in thickness, and precisely in arrangement, as if the slices were components in a mechanism that would bring the house back into alignment. Wolfe took his fork and knife and began to eat as if nothing unusual had occurred. The only sign that anything had occurred was the expression in his eyes, which remained slightly colder than usual, as if he were determined not to allow the night to be forgotten through comfort. I ate too, with a speed that would have embarrassed me in better company. But the ham was excellent, and my body was grateful. After a few minutes, Wolfe spoke without looking up. "Inspector Cramer has arrested Mr. Harrogate." "Yes," I said through a mouthful. "And Curtis Vale." Wolfe's knife paused. "And Horseman," Wolfe said, "because if he was used to carry that folder, or to lend his name to the permit office, he is either our witness or our next corpse." I stopped chewing. Fritz, who was pouring coffee, went still. "I don't know," I admitted. "We haven't heard." Wolfe's eyes narrowed. "We will." Fritz set down the pot with care. "Mr. Wolfe," he said, voice tight, "did Theodore betray you?" Wolfe did not look at him, I do not know. I know only that he was used. Fritz's mouth tightened. Used. Wolfe's voice was even. A frightened man is often useful. That does not make him a villain. It makes him a tool. Tools can be repaired sometimes. Fritz's eyes flashed with pain and anger, but he said nothing. He returned to the sideboard with the rigid control of a man who would not allow grief to disturb the table setting. Wolfe continued eating. It was not indifference. It was Wolfe's way of refusing to let disorder claim a permanent room in his house. After breakfast, Wolfe returned to the office. He sat in his chair, reached for his beer, and then paused. His hand stayed in the air a fraction longer than usual. "Archie," he said, "your report." "Yes," I said. I went to my desk, pulled out paper, and began to write. Filing a report for Wolfe is not like filing a report for a client. It is like writing a confession to a priest who already knows your sins. Wolfe wanted the facts clean, the logic arranged, the threads tied. I wrote it the way I always did, with my own voice. For the parts Wolfe did not care about and plain truth for the parts he did. I outlined Brand's permit denial, Brand's bribes, the threatened audit, the pressure campaign, the staging of witnesses, the borrowed poison, the forged sign, the planted note, Ashby's nervousness, and Harrogate's collapse under documentation. I included the corrected timelines because that was the spine of it. Wolfe at 2, imposter at 4, poison after Wolfe, death after 4:30. Facts do not need decoration. Cramer's voice came through, rough but steadier than it had been all night. "Archie, morning," I said. "How's Christmas at the precinct?" "It stinks," he said. "We got Harrogate booked. Vale too. Eddie Vale's in a room sweating. Internal Affairs is already crawling." "Good," I said. "I hope they bring flashlights." Cramer grunted. "Listen, I'm calling to confirm closure." I glanced at Wolfe. He was sitting back, hands on his stomach, eyes half-lidded, listening. "Closure is a big word," I said. "We got a recorded statement," Cramer said. "We got documentation. We got Klein's statement. We got the phone log. We got the evidence locker chain. We got enough to charge Harrogate and Vale for both murders and for conspiracy. The district attorney is smiling like it's his birthday." "And Wolfe," I said. Cramer's voice softened slightly. "Wolfe's clear officially." I looked at Wolfe again. He did not move. "All right," I said. "And Horseman?" There was a pause. "Not found yet," Cramer said. "We're looking. We got a lead." A cab driver said, "He took a thin man with an overnight bag to Penn Station last night." My stomach tightened. Penn Station, that could mean anywhere. "Yeah," Cramer said. "We got people checking cameras. It's slow. Holiday staff." Wolfe's voice cut in, calm and precise. "Inspector." I held the receiver out toward Wolfe. "He's on." Wolfe did not take the phone. He spoke to it as if it were a person in the chair across from him. "Inspector Cramer," Wolfe said. "You will locate Theodore Horseman. You will treat him as a witness, not a criminal, unless evidence compels otherwise. Do you understand?" Cramer's sigh crackled through the line. "I understand." Wolfe continued, "You will also ensure that Detective Kendall is kept away from this matter." There was a pause, then a grunt. "Kendall's been reassigned to babysit internal affairs. They're chewing him, he's not happy." "Excellent," Wolfe said. Cramer hesitated. Then he said, "Nero, about last night." Wolfe's eyes were heavy, lidded. "Yes." Cramer cleared his throat. "I apologize again. Officially, I filed it. I wrote it down. I don't like writing apologies, but I did it." Wolfe's expression did not soften. "Your distaste is irrelevant. Your function is to repair your error." Cramer's voice tightened. "You're not going to let it go." Wolfe's tone was mild. "Forgiveness is not a civic requirement. Competence is." Cramer exhaled. "Merry Christmas, Wolfe," Wolfe said. "Good morning." And then he nodded slightly at me. I took the hint and hung up. I set the receiver down and looked at Wolfe. You know, most men would accept an apology. Wolfe's eyes narrowed. Most men are foolish. I went back to writing. Fritz moved through the house with renewed precision, as if the return of Wolfe had restored the axis of the world. The clink of dishes sounded like order reasserting itself. Outside, the city stirred. A few cars passed. A distant horn blared once and then stopped. Somewhere, a child laughed. Somewhere, a man swore. New York was resuming its habits, the way it always did. When I finished the report, I handed it to Wolfe. He took it, read it without haste, and then set it aside with a small nod. "It is adequate," he said. That was praise. I leaned back. So Christmas survives. Wolfe's eyes half closed. It survives, it is not improved. Fritz appeared in the doorway with a small tray. He had brought Wolfe his beer. At last, Wolfe took it and held it a moment, as if confirming that the universe still contained sensible things. Fritz looked at Wolfe, and there was something in his eyes that was not just relief. "Mr. Wolfe," he said quietly, "the house is in order." Wolfe glanced at him. "It always is, Fritz." Fritz's mouth tightened, but it was almost a smile. "Yes, sir." He left. Wolfe sipped his beer and stared into space, not dreaming, not resting, simply moving on because that was what he did. He forgave nothing. Wallowing was for pigs and politicians. I sat at my desk, the report done, the case in a neat stack, and felt the satisfaction settle in. Not joy, satisfaction. Justice had been late, but it had arrived. Wolfe was home. The brownstone was intact. Fritz's ham had been served on schedule, even if the schedule had been dragged through a precinct first. Another Christmas had survived Nero Wolfe intact, almost, because somewhere out there, a thin orchid man with a question mark beside his name was still missing. And Wolfe's eyes, half-lidded, already held the faint impatience of a man who does not like loose ends, not even on Christmas.